Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome to our episode 105 of the Drew Palace Show. Today's a very great day. I've got Barclay, McGain, and also Gerard Rennick, former senator Gerard Rennick. Who would have thought? It's great to have such illustrious guests. I see Barclay has just joined the studio. I'm going to add both of them in soon. If you're watching live on YouTube, please give the channel a subscribe. Leave a like on the video. It helps us reach more people, and subscribe to my channel helps us do more great content like this. I've got a beautiful audience. We've got how many people? 60 people watching live on YouTube and 100 people watching live on Twitter. So make sure to leave a like on the video, help retweet it, help share it around, send the link around, subscribe as well. We've got Barclay entering the studio. I've sent the link to Rennick as well. Rennick, I have sent you the link. And just let me know as well, guys, how's the audio? How's everything going? Please let me know. Is the audio good? Please let me know. We've got some good comments. Got some communists in the chat saying Viva la CCP. I hate that. We hate the communists. We've got some good comments here. And Barclay, actually, while we wait, you should share the link out one more time to your friends, Barclay. And I will also send the link to Rennick. Hopefully he can share it to his audience. He's got a huge audience. I'm going to comment my Discord link for people. This is going in the chat, Discord link. Somebody asking me, is the camera supposed to move by itself? It's in Osmo Pocket 3. It moves automatically. It tracks the face. Very cool. I've posted my Discord link. People can join it if they're interested. Always good to have a bit of community. And I'm just waiting for Rennick to join as well before I put Barclay in. I see Barclay in the back room. I would like to get Rennick in here as well, and then we can start. Should I add you in, Barclay? I'll add Barclay in. Barclay, how are you?
Fantastic. Great to be back on, Drew.
Good.
And good on you for hosting this.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm glad that you came to me to host the debate. It's really cool to have both you and Rennick on the channel. Cool to have an ex-senator as well, and he's doing great work. He helped me when the University of Queensland tried to expel me many years ago, so I'll always be I'll always be thankful to Rennick for that, despite whatever different disagreements we may have on other issues. But I have sent the link to Rennick. I hope he will join soon. And Barclay, while we wait, I encourage you to send out the YouTube link to your fans one more time. We've got 70 people watching live. I think we can get even more people, hopefully.
Definitely. And Drew,
Yes.
What show number are we up to now?
We're up to 105.
Wow.
I've been doing the live show. I was doing it every single day. I kind of had to take a break a little bit. I finished off my last Bachelor of Arts courses. And yeah, I see Rennick has joined the chat, which is good. Okay, I'll add Rennick. Excellent. I'll add Rennick in. Rennick, how are you, mate? Thanks for joining.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Drew. How are you?
Good to have you, mate. Good to have you. I was just going to say, guys, we've to give people a few minutes. I think we should give people 2-3 minutes to join up. Rennick, you've got a huge Facebook. You should definitely share the YouTube link to your Facebook. I think we could get a couple hundred extra people.
I did.
Oh, excellent. Beautiful. I think we've got 78 people watching live on YouTube, 200 watching live on Twitter, which is great. I reckon we should give it 1 or 2 more minutes before we jump into things. Should we quickly explain to people what the outline of the debate will be?
Yeah, go for it.
Excellent. So the outline of the debate, to my understanding, and I will try my best to avoid intervening. This is really a Rennick v. Barclay affair. This debate will be basically on the subject of whether Australian right-wingers should join a major party, the Liberal National Party, or should they join a minor party, and should they abandon the two-party system? Now, Rennick is obviously a very interesting individual in this because he was an LNP senator for 6 years. And he split off from the LNP and formed his own political party, the People First Party, and they did actually quite well at the election. Cleared 4%, which is the threshold to get public funding. They've built up. Gerard Rennick has built up branches across the country. That has set a fire under Pauline. So basically, I reckon because of Rennick as an individual, he's forced Pauline for the first time in 25 years to do branches in her party. So it's very interesting. And it's funny as well. Barclay is Barclay is going to be arguing for the position of joining the LNP, but I think he's also not even in the LNP. I think he's been kicked out by the. I think the funny thing here is both people who will be debating have had their share of run-ins with the LNP party structure. So maybe Barclay, do you want to quickly introduce yourself, and then Rennick can quickly introduce itself, and we'll give it a minute or two, and then we'll jump in.
For sure. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Gerard, and particularly to you as well, Drew, for hosting this debate. My name is Barclay McGain. I'm 25. I'm a UQ graduate. That's how I know Drew. And I'm an LNP member.
You graduated?
I was an LNP member. Yes. And I've got my economics degree from UQ. Thank you, Drew. Yeah.
When did you graduate?
At end of 2023. I got my econ degree. So, yeah.
Father for me. Good on you.
Thank you, mate. But no, I also know Gerard, of course, by being involved with the LNP. I was a member when I joined in 2016. I was suspended in 2019, and I haven't been made a member since. Having said that, I think it's important to clarify, I'm not arguing this position as a point of, just for the sake of the debate so we can have a debate. I hold this view sincerely. I think sincerely the best thing people can do as particularly young people, but also, and people of any age, the best thing they can do as a conservative right-winger is to get involved in the LNP. And that might not necessarily be because they agree with everything that they've done, but more so just because I think this is the place where you need to be if you want to have an impact on policy, to get elected representatives and to make an impact ultimately. So that's kind of what I've come to know. It's been a long journey to come to this view. Who knows, maybe in 5 years' time, I might no longer be at this view. But right now, looking at, as far as I'm concerned, all the available opportunities out there for different parties to join, I think this is the best way to be involved in politics.
Excellent. Thank you, Barclay. And I just want to quickly add before we jump into Rennick's stuff, we've got nearly 100 people watching live. If you're watching live, please subscribe to the channel, leave a like. It helps us reach more people, and share the link around so that more people join. Thank you, guys. Okay, Rennick, let's go in.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. My name's Gerard Rennick, former Senator for Queensland, now Party President of People First. Yes, another minor party that was started basically because we wanted to lift the corporate governance inside political parties, and this is something that we'll talk about later tonight, is that I believe that the failure of our political system is actually a result of the failure of our party system, which is no longer listening to its members, particularly on the right side of politics. Generally, generalisations here, but generally speaking, Labor have a top-down command and control approach. Conservative parties have always tried to argue they give everyone a say. I will argue later tonight that's no longer the case. I don't hold a fast and fixed view that you should have, join a major or join a minor. I think you need both, and I think you do need independence in the Senate. We could branch this discussion out later on between the merits of the Washington system and the Westminster system, where I now believe, and I've changed my view on this, that the executive should come from outside the parliament to have proper separation of powers. Look, in a nutshell, this is going to be a good discussion because it's really, really important. I think if we want to see better government in this country, we actually start looking at the internal processes inside parties themselves, and particularly the delegate system, particularly the right of everyone to have a say in who they get to select to go to Canberra. So I'll leave it at that.
Excellent. Thank you, Rennick. And how do you suggest we do this as a format, guys? Should we go maybe a couple minutes each? What would be best? What do you think?
I think a few minutes either side, and we might see how the conversation flows. There might be some opportunities for rebuttal. I'm happy for it to be free flowing at various points, and for you to kind of intervene at various points too. Just to add some context, Drew, as someone who has been involved in the party registration process too, I think you have a unique angle to add to this as well. So yeah.
That's funny. Okay, guys, let's jump into it. Barclay, do you want to start us off?
Definitely. Well, my contention is that the best thing people can do right now, if they're conservative and right-wing and hold those beliefs, the best thing they can do is join in either states, either the Liberal or the National Party, and in Queensland, join the Liberal National Party. And it's because of the say that they get involved, the say that they get in pre-selections. Now, of course, you'd like to think that, well, there's a number of parties where you get involved in the pre-selection of your local candidate. But my contention is that the fact that there is a party of government that is available to you, being the Liberal National Party or the coalition, that presents a different opportunity that no other minor party can provide. I look at the concrete paths and the concrete numbers that we need to analyze if we are to see changes on a number of key issues. Let's say net zero, let's say immigration. I happen to be pro-life. If you want change on abortion policy in the Queensland State Legislature, what you need to do that is you need seats in the lower house. How do we get them? Well, right now, the Liberal National Party have a majority of seats in the state legislature in Queensland, and in the federal parliament, there is no representation from any of the centre-right or right-wing minor parties aside from Bob Katter. And some people will say that he's actually not all that right-wing, right? So there is one representative in the federal parliament who is what I would call a conservative elected from a minor party. My conclusion that I draw to that is that these minor parties are not a vehicle with which to elect people into the lower house. My ultimate goal in politics, as I say to people on the street, just really distill it down to this basic level stuff. I want to be able to look at my prime minister on the nightly news and say, yep, that's my guy. And I think that in the United States, conservatives in the United States can genuinely look at Trump. Sure, he has some faults, right? They've come to fruition pretty recently. But ultimately, if you're a conservative in the US, you can look at the nightly news and say, yeah, that guy Trump, he's got my best interests at heart. Now, this wasn't just like some accident, right? It took him 10 years to essentially reform that party. You got to think, like the last GOP presidential nominee prior to Donald Trump was Mitt Romney. He has now essentially been excommunicated from the Republican Party. That is how much someone like Trump and people around him, people in his administration and also people who would call themselves on the Trump wing of the Republican Party, the more populist types, these are people who have well and truly transformed that party. So, back once upon a time when they would have felt like they had a duopoly back in, say, 2012, in the election of Obama and Mitt Romney, now you've really got a genuine opportunity to choose between, wow, this view of the country or this view of the country. I think everyone watching can agree that there was a massive opportunity, a massive difference of views between Kamala at the last presidential election and Trump at the last presidential election. The issue that we have in Australia, and I think a lot of people watching this will agree, a lot of conservatives, will be that we've seen the Liberal Party and the National Party in recent years go quite Labor light. It's this conventional median voter theory where that in order to win votes back off the Labor Party, you need to essentially emulate them. I happen to believe that's a flawed idea. I think a lot of people watching would happen to believe it's a flawed idea too, and that often voters reward you if you come out and be bold and brave with your policy. Having said that, ultimately, I do think inbuilt into our system is a two-party system, and there's two reasons why I think that, and why we can't replicate, we can't replicate what is necessarily happening in the UK, for instance. One, in the UK, they have optional voting. Optional voting essentially means that you only really have the really passionate, diehard voters coming out to vote for the proposition. That's a huge difference. At a recent council by-election in the UK, I think there was only 20% voter turnout. That is why Reform is doing so well, because Britons don't have, they're not compelled or forced to vote. And as a result, only the people who are really fed up with immigration, only the people who are really fed up with the bloated size of government are turning out to vote. And of course, if they're frustrated and angry, they're going to be voting with Reform. Segue that to Australia, where you've got a lot of pent-up people, who are doing marches on the street for March for Australia, and they're angry. And sure, you're seeing an uptick in the One Nation vote, but ultimately they're forgetting that there's a whole swathe of people who are actually not bothered, or they're not super concerned about these issues. They might have it in the back of their head, but they're not willing enough to go out and be super visceral about their opposition to immigration policies. And they turn out at elections, and they're also vulnerable to political advertising, right? We'd like to think that everyone on this call that we're not vulnerable to political advertising. Well, that's probably true, but there's a whole chunk of Australians, I'd say nearly 60% of people, who probably change their vote from election to election. And a lot of them are just going to go with whichever party has the biggest budget, the biggest amount to spend on billboards, the most amount of people handing out, that kind of thing. And often in just about every state legislature, it's a case of either it's going to be the Labor Party or the coalition forming some kind of a government. And I think that often we find that, we look at this American system and we see them being involved in their primaries and whatnot, and we think that this is some like an unattainable barrier. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of Americans that vote in the primary system, but there is a massive opportunity here in the coalition parties in Australia. I'm led to believe that there is under 50,000 members of the coalition in all of Australia. Far less of them are even active. look in in all three of our state of Queensland, there is only 10,000 members of the LNP in the state of Queensland. A genuine grassroots movement to flood the party with actual genuine conservatives, I think can net better outcomes. And this isn't just some crazy off vision that I have in the distant future. It's happening right now. A friend of mine, and I think a friend to a number of people on this call, is Senator Matt Canavan. If it is the case that all the conservatives in the LNP today upped and left and joined Pauline Hanson or the People First Party, as admirable as the efforts of those parties are doing, Matt Canavan would lose his pre-selection, right? And now you might say, well, he should go ahead and join People First. He should go ahead and join One Nation. Well, my predicament is we saw in the Senate in the last election in 2025, just earlier this year, that we had two, in my opinion, outstanding people that I would love to have seen be in the top 6 for the senators elected in Queensland, being Malcolm Roberts and also Gerard Rennick. My predicament is they ended up fighting with each other, as I saw it from an outsider's perspective, for the last spot. And it ended up being the case that, Gerard was no longer able to remain as a senator, but he lost to Malcolm Roberts. And I'm thinking, this can't be all we're aspiring to in politics, whereby, if Gerard was to run again for the Senate in 2028, that he's going up against Pauline Hanson for her Senate spot. Is this really how we achieve a total right-wing conservative victory? To me, it doesn't seem like that could be our end goal in politics. Ultimately, again, we need to be getting to the lower house. But even before that, it seems to be very counterintuitive that we've got conservatives taking out other conservatives. One other final tidbit I'll add before handing it over, because I know I've spoken for quite some time, is a lot of people in the chat rightfully will bemoan the fact that there is a number of people that have seen the Liberal Party shift way to the left. In my opinion, this correlates near perfectly with the proliferation of right-wing minor parties. Now, obviously, Gerard's with People First. We've also got Pauline Hanson's One Nation. But we forget the myriad of minor parties that are taking up 400, 500, 600 members here and there in all of our states and territories. Things like the Heart Party, Gap Party, Libertarian Party, whatever the heck Clive Palmer's doing recently, Trumpet of Patriots, whatever that is. All these other parties, even Jackie Lambie Network, if you want to go down to Tasmania, if you call them conservatives, I'm not sure, right? These are all parties that are taking genuine good members that could be in the room there voting for someone like Matt Canavan, making a genuine influence, and they could actually be saving senators and saving people in the lower house. If you want to join an echo chamber, right, and where everyone agrees with each other and we're all on the same page, join People First or join One Nation, right? If you want to join a party where I do believe you have to take the battle up to the left, and sometimes genuinely it is the left from within, you need to join a major party, a party of government. And that's the contention that I would give to people.
Interesting. Okay, Rennick, do you want to go?
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Drew. Okay. Look, Barclay, I agree. In theory, I agree with a lot of what you just said, but there's a big difference between theory and practice, and actually one of the flaws when it comes to Liberal policy, that's brought them down is the whole neoliberal policy, but that's another topic for another day. When you say join the party, as you well know, it's not that simple, because the party as it stands at the moment will actually vet you out. Will go through your social media. They're in. I think this is only for candidate pre-selection, but they will go through and basically not allow you to join the party. And you are a perfect example of this, Barclay. You were thrown out of the party 6 or 7 years ago. One of the other people that was responsible or involved in the same affair that you got in trouble by the party for actually ran against me in the pre-selection. So the double standards within the party is the problem, and that is that they don't apply the rules evenly.
Is that Nelson Savar?
Yeah, I wasn't going to name names, but this is the problem. I don't have a problem with having a major party. You obviously need a major party if you want to form government. So you don't have any argument from me there. The problem isn't the idea of a major party. The problem is that the major party, as we know it today, the coalition, not only is it weakened and insipid and moved to the left, as you say, on policy, it's its internal processes that are inherently corrupted. Now, you take the next step here. I'll give you a couple of examples. So we've just had the debacle whereby the coalition has backflipped on its net zero policy of the last 4 years, where I was part of the LNP when they went to the 2019 election, and they said they weren't signing up to net zero. 2 years later, they signed up to net zero, breaking a promise they gave to the Australian people because they thought it was going to win them the next election. Turns out they got it wrong. They then spent 4 years trying to defend a policy that I can assure you most people inside that party did not agree with. And now they have then subsequently backflipped. But what's interesting about that is that when they signed up to net zero in October 2021, a number of MPs were not didn't have to hold their pre-selection. In particular, Susan Ley, who's now the leader of the party, and Alex Hawke. Now, a bloke by the name of Matt Kemazuli, who I'm sure you know, who was on the New South Wales Liberal executive at the time, took the party to court and said, no, we want to have a pre-selection in these particular seats, and it could have been a few others as well, but those two are the two that come to mind. And the Liberal Party went to court and said, no, we don't have to have a pre-selection. We can pick who we want. And the courts upheld that decision. Now, you've got to have, and this is what I'm talking about before, my goal, step one, is to improve corporate governance within parties. You have to have proper pre-selections and pre-selections every time. You can't protect incumbent MPs, because when you protect incumbent MPs and when the party apparatchiks do that, and that party apparatchiks are controlled by the lobbyists and the big end of town, you are no longer an active grassroots. Well, you might be an active grassroots party, but you're not a democratic grassroots party, whereby you give the people a turnout in elections, do the road siding, stand there and give how to vote cards. They aren't the ones being given a say. So you've broken democracy. So this is where the Liberal Party is broken. It's particularly broken in New South Wales. Another example, of course, is Moira Deeming, who went along to a rally, behaved herself, perfect legitimate cause about protecting the rights of women. She was effectively, and I think the court ruled this, that she was defamed by her own party leader. The party leader refused to back down. So it's another example of whereby, the coalition here like I said, I want to be clear about this. I'm not against having a major party in the lower house. I have a different view in the upper house, but in order to form government, but they've got to actually, uphold the values they say they believe in, and they don't. Now, the third part to this story, as you well know, was that in my pre-selection, I lost by 3 votes. There are about 7 irregularities, one of which was that they didn't give Peter Dutton the vote, despite the fact that he was eligible to get one. And they turned around and gave David Littleproud and Adrian Schrinner a vote who weren't eligible to get one. So there were some clear-cut cases here. I took it to court. The party didn't dispute any of the evidence I put forward to the court. What their basis was that we don't have to actually uphold the rules of our own constitution. So the party, the Queensland LNP, went to court and said, we don't have to follow our own rules. Now, this is where, for me, this was, and I mean, it cost me a lot of money to do this, but I think it was worthwhile. It demonstrated to me that this party might talk the talk, but it doesn't walk the walk. You can't have parties that make laws for the people, not upholding their own laws for their members and for themselves. And this is where I'm not trying to, when people have a crack at me for trying to tear down the LNP or the coalition, that's not my purpose. What I'm trying to do is speed up the renewal process by actually having a democratic party whereby everyone gets a vote in the pre-selections, so within their electorates, and for the Senate pre-selections, they're all going to get a vote. Anyone can come to state conference and get a vote. So this is the other problem with the LNP, and I'm pretty sure this is across the entire country. So for those of you who aren't familiar with how the party system works, they have this thing called a delegate system. So as Barclay said before, the LNP have about 10,000 members, median age is 72, which is a red flag. But putting that aside, state council, which makes a lot of the decisions, including picking senators, only have about 300, a little bit over 300 members. So there's a state council of about 3% of the party that makes some of the most important decisions of the party. And even state conference, you're only allowed 6 delegates per branch. Now, my view is every member should be allowed to turn up state conference and vote if they're a paid up member of the party, period. Because what we're doing here is, I wasted time trying to, talk to state council, is a lot of time is wasted within the party fighting for those positions on state council. So this is another process that needs to change as well. So long story short, and we'll talk about the compulsory voting system after you have another crack, Barclay, is that the processes within the coalition as it stands today needs to change. I don't have a problem with the minor party. There are way too many minor parties and we need to merge. And that's something I'm actively working on, and I'll acknowledge the minor parties on the right are a rabble, in the sense that we do need to merge, and a big part of that problem, I should add, is Pauline Hanson. She's never been prepared to talk to other parties. Serious questions need to be asked about what the reason for that is. Is that because is there any money exchanged between one of the problems I have with One Nation is we don't know who their state executive is. We've never seen their accounts. Are there payments of any money towards Pauline, James Ashby? These things need to be declared because there's a potential for conflict of interest here. So there's a lot of problems in the minor parties as well. So, I mean, I won't go into the details of some of the other minors. The Libertarians probably run the best process, to give them credit for the way they run their internal party structures. They do have branches. Unfortunately, they believe our infrastructure should be privatised, and that's just a bridge I can't, until they drop that policy, we're not merging. But, yeah, so I'll end at that.
Brilliant. Drew, if you don't mind, I had 8 things I would like to respond to. One, the first thing that
you can
the first. Definitely, no, 100%. And I think this is such a great conversation. I'm so thankful for your time, Gerard, honestly. I think first off, one thing I was taught in grade 3 was that there was this rule, I before E except after C. That was a general rule that you could always use when spelling words, I before E except after C. But of course, there was exceptions to that rule. There is multiple words that you could probably think of, the word weird, for instance, where E comes before I and there's no C in front of it. What I'm getting at here is that just because I do not have the ability to rejoin the LNP and Drew will not have the ability to join the LNP does not make that the rule for everyone else. The vast majority of people that I put my hand up myself have tried to recruit have been allowed in, and they're actually starting to be allowed in a timely fashion. So I really don't want to...
So when? Just recently? Sure. Is that
just so recently? I would say in the last 6 months, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll come back to that. Thanks.
Yes, and I think there was a lot of hold-ups, if we're playing a straight bat here, I think there was a lot of hold-ups with the federal election. That was at least the reason why a lot of people got. So that's kind of my rule, is that you don't let the exception be the rule. Let's have the rule be the rule, and then, yes, there are exceptions to the rule. As much as I am not permitted to be in the party, and it's people can Google probably why, right? There are a lot of people that are allowed to rejoin the party. The other thing that I had is, Gerard started off by talking about how there was a lot of weakness in the coalition's policy of coming out against net zero. Totally agree. In my opinion, the LNP need to pull out of net zero. Need to pull out of Paris, the Paris Climate Accords, of course. But on a range of other policies, they've got a long way to go. But I think it's also important that we don't play a no true Scotsman fallacy. This idea that because something isn't good enough, that we throw our hands up and we leave. Now he mentions Pauline Hanson. I also make the point that we would never know the name Pauline Hanson today if she did not win a Liberal Party pre-selection in the year 1996 for the seat of Oxley, which allowed her to then be in federal parliament. Is that not just like a real discratchment there? I'll just reiterate that. We would never have heard of the most well-known and successful, influential right-wing minor party figure.
Hang on. I think Rennick dropped off the call. I'm not sure why. I hope he joins back up. But I mean, sorry, you keep going, Barclay, because it was an interesting point.
Yeah, no worries. Hopefully he gets back in. But with Pauline Hanson, we would never have known her name and her entire story or heard of her party if it was the case that she did not win a Liberal Party pre-selection in 1996. I put it to the people, and I'm awesome. We've got Gerard back. I hope you'll understand that I say this in the best of ways, Jared. I put it to a lot of the audience, a lot of the people in the chat who are very big fans of Gerard Rennick. I put it to you that you would not know the name Gerard Rennick if he did not win a LNP pre-selection in 2019 to be a senator for a 6-year period from 2019 to 2025. Now, Gerard kind of adds a caveat to his side of the argument, which I think is totally fair too, saying that we need a major and a minor approach. I think this approach that we've seemingly operated with for nearly 2 decades, ever since One Nation's really been in existence, that has been exactly what has brought us down. We've had like a foot in each pond kind of approach, right? And that's what's allowed us to be weakened. The fact that Conservatives are split across so many different minor parties and some within the major party has allowed for internal ballots to be won by people who believe that the way that the LNP succeeds in elections is by being Labor light. It's called divide and conquer. It's a very common saying, and we are doing it ourselves by continuing to splinter and creating right-wing minor parties. Now, I think it's very commendable that Gerard has this effort, and I do believe it is sincere, and I saw him run with the Katters Australian Party earlier on this year. I thought it was very admirable. But even in his rhetoric, you can see that there is so much fragmentation of these right-wing people. He was saying that he doesn't think it's compatible with the Libertarian Party because of some of these policies. By the way, these are parties which have zilch representation in the state of Queensland. We are essentially arguing over crumbs. And we are right now, Susan Lee, the people who run the Liberal Party and want to see it be a paler imitation of Labor, are honestly thrilled that Gerard has started his own party. They're absolutely stoked that Pauline Hanson continues to exist. Why? Because genuine people in the chat who are saying that, we need to all vote for right-wing minor parties. Again, this isn't about who you vote for. Read what I'm saying here. This isn't about who you vote for. That's a separate discussion. Who you're a member of is the discussion tonight. And as a result of that, they are thrilled that we have right-wing figures, people like Gerard Rennick, people like Malcolm Roberts, people like Senator Pauline Hanson, all saying that they need to join One Nation because it is taking all the Conservatives out of the Liberal National Party and putting them into these minor parties where they have no electoral viability. And we complain about how the LNP, or it's because the LNP have gone totally left-wing. Well, when you take all the light out of the room, can you really complain that it's dark? I mean, there is so much darkness in the LNP, not because, they just decided to turn the lights off. No, all the light left the room. All the people with the bright ideas, all the people with conservative values, Christians, because all these people left and created their own right-wing minor parties, it's created a very, very distinct issue where we see both major parties not representing the vast, vast, vast majority of people's views on immigration. And I want to go on immigration because I think it's the number one issue. 66% of Australians say that immigration it needs to be cut or significantly cut. Yet you look at our federal politicians, right? You've got some people in the coalition saying that, not all of them certainly, and all of Labor and the Greens are, of course, super pro-immigration. Well, why is that? It's because all the people who are against mass immigration, viscerally against mass immigration, think that the way you get involved in politics, one, is by liking, commenting, and sharing posts on social media, or two, marching around on George Street and Albert Street on a Sunday, chanting March for Australia, and saying some slogans, Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi. No, the way that these people ought to be involved in politics is by getting involved in pre-selections. A small anecdote. A friend of mine, Amanda Stoker, she recently won her pre-selection in a safe Liberal seat. This is a seat which has only ever been held by the LNP on a vote of 63-40. That is staggering to me. The fact that we could create a state MP simply by having 63 people in that instance rock up to the Cleveland RSL, to me is mind-boggling. It's a truth that not enough people in the comments, it's a truth that none of them know, or they're belligerently choosing not to act on it. Because this is a party that is formed ultimately by its members. People like Gerard and Malcolm Roberts, for instance, will bemoan the fact that the Liberal Party has strayed from its values. I agree. I'm not out here saying vote for the LNP. I'm simply saying to you that the LNP is a democratic party in the sense that it will allow you to elect their members. Now, Gerard points again to exceptions to the rule whereby they will play silly buggers and not allow you to have a fair pre-selection. Indeed, sometimes it feels like, there's two rugby teams going at it and one team has to permanently have a player in the sin bin or on the bench for the entire game. Well, it has been the case, and I'm a rugby league fan, where a team has scored tries and continues to score tries even with one person in the sin bin. It is an uphill battle, but it's a battle worth having solely because we need electoral viability. You do not win elections by values on a website. Ultimately, you win elections and you change policy and craft or cull policy in Australia by being in Parliament. And I see the LNP as the best vehicle with which to do that. And, Gerard, is very, very clear that he's got a laundry list of problems that he can diagnose within the LNP. But one thing I know about doctors is they don't just diagnose problems, they also give you a solution. And in my opinion, Gerard is not ultimately giving you a solution as to how he can get people into the lower house. Again, we need 76 of them. We need at least one, right? We need to get people in the lower house to ultimately go back to that very, very thing I first set out talking about. Having a Conservative Prime Minister can say, yep, that's my guy, right? And we have not heard one argument tonight about how a minor party can render a lower house candidate, even in state politics. It's even harder on state politics because there's no upper house here in Queensland. And, Gerard also mentioned one other point. This is the final one of the there's actually two more points. But the seventh point I wanted to raise is Gerard mentioned that the average age of the Liberal National Party is 72. That's true. And he said that it's a red flag. Well, I would say that's a glass half empty mindset. It's actually, in my opinion, as a young 25-year-old, a massive green flag. There is going to be a mass generational change where a number of people, by pure attrition, are no longer going to be able to be in the party anymore because they're dying out, right? Right now, if you were to join the LNP, you're one of 10,000 people having a say in pre-selections. Guess what? In 10 years' time, you're one of 9,000 people having a say in a Liberal National Party. The Liberal National Party, believe me, do not want members. They do not want members. Because right now, back in the 70s and 80s, the number one way in which, you would get political content or exposure is someone on the street side or someone handing you a flyer saying, have you considered voting for the LNP? Right now, the number one way that I get political content is via my mobile phone, right? That's the way in which I get political content. And guess what? You don't need any members or volunteers to give people political content. The LNP do not want members. If we get that through our heads, we will firmly understand what it is we are being called to do as Conservatives. And in my opinion, that is to join the LNP. One other thing that Gerard did say is that the LNP is controlled by this group of 300 state councillors and it's a party of 10,000, so only 3% of them get a say. Well, it is indeed true that every financial member of the LNP, all 10,000 of them, have the ability to run and be a state councillor. Indeed, a friend of mine who's only been a member of the party for 3 months, he's not wealthy, he's not well-connected, he's not that savvy about politics. He just recently got elected to the state council via the Young LNP and their region delegate elections. So this is a very, very tangible process where anyone in that 10,000, if they at least know and they have someone there to guide them, can allow them to be involved in the political process and make a say on whether Matt Canavan remains a senator or not. That is the proposition that I'm outlaying to people. These are all tangible things within the next year that someone can be involved in saving someone as good as Matt Canavan, who is nearly single-handedly dragging Liberal and National Party policy on climate change. And by the way, he's not done yet, right? There's still plenty to go. But he's single-handedly shifting the Overton window in this country. And I think that ultimately I see the Liberal National Party as a vehicle. I put it to everyone in the chat that we would never have heard of the names of Pauline Hanson, Gerard Rennick, George Christensen, Bob Catter, Craig Kelly. We would never have heard any of these names if they did not win a pre-selection from a major party. That is a truth bomb that I think a lot of people need to understand. Use it as a vehicle, and then when you're in Parliament, go ahead and speak your mind. Thank you.
One quick second. Thank you, Barclay. Look, you're a great speaker. I just wanted to say, guys, thank you so much to the 120 people watching live on YouTube. Please leave a Please subscribe if you can. It helps us grow the channel. And leave a like on the video. It helps us reach more people. YouTube will recommend us to more people. I think we've got 30 likes on the video, but 120 people watching live. If you can leave a like on the video, we'll get to YouTube will push it out to more people. Thank you so much, guys. Now, Rennick, please go in and go in for the kill.
Okay, so Barclay, just in regards to your first point about lots of people are just joining the party, my understanding of that was that happened after Doug Hawkes became the president after state conference, and that was in direct response to people joining up to People First and One Nation. And I put it in that order because we started recruiting people, and we've had feedback from people that you've even mentioned tonight, that they were shocked at how many people we got out on the booths in the federal election. And I've been very outspoken about we're going to be an active grassroots party. as a result of that, One Nation, and Drew pointed this out earlier on, One Nation for the first time in 25 years now suddenly wants branches again. Whether or not they give them a vote's another thing, but let's wait and see. So I would argue that we're not being destructive at all, and that the reason why the LNP let those people into the party was that they've suddenly woken up to the fact that, well, if we keep blocking these people, they're going to join another party. So I would argue that we've actually been, or the People First in particular, has been constructive by doing what we've doing, because we have now forced the LNP to allow Conservatives into the party. But can I go back to, again, you talk about state council, and anyone can become a state councillor. The fact is that of those 300 or thereabouts state council positions, there's about 60 or 70 honorary life members, many of whom don't attend. So the final count on my Senate pre-selection was around 240 total people voted. Now, of that 240, there are about 40 state MPs, 25 federal MPs, and 20 Brisbane City councillors. So of state council, almost half, not quite, probably say 35% of state council is actually elected representatives. So yet again, it's misleading to say that anyone can just become state council, because state council is actually already stacked in favour of the party apparatchiks, number one. Number two, I was at a state council, I think it was last year, or might have been 23 or 24, at a Young Liberal party meeting whereby a former Howard government minister, and I'll name names, Gary Hardgrave, pointed out to the branch, the young LNPers, he was the region chair. This was one of the very few MPs, let alone ex-ministers, that had stayed active in the party. He had a real issue with what was considered branch stacking by the young LNP to get onto the state council. Because he raised this issue and had the temerity to call them out on it, he was thrown out of the party. Now, that is an absolute disgrace. And yet again, I come back to, I don't disagree with your theory of bringing everyone in together and all operating under one big tent. But what you seem to continually ignore is that the party apparatchiks keep kicking people out. By the way, I didn't just walk away from the party. I actually spent, $500,000 of my own money fighting these guys in court just to show that the party would go to court and say, we aren't even going to follow our own rules. And by the way, the Labor Party does it as well. This isn't just an LNP thing. And the judge, by the way, agreed with them, despite the fact that 15 years earlier, he said that the party's constitution should be justiciable, albeit the judge will argue that he had to follow precedent. But the point is, we have a situation in this country where the major parties are arguing that their constitutions, they shouldn't be held accountable to their own constitutions. And this is a real problem, because what
Labor's
you
the
end up
same.
with it.
Same with
And
Labor.
so therefore, what you end up with are party yes men. And it's shocking to say that, and I know why you're lobbying for Matt, because Matt Canavan's position is under fire as well. I think he'll hold on, Matt. They'd be mad to get rid of him. But the point is that they will come after Matt as well, because the Wets don't like any Conservatives. And so when John Howard calls it a broad church, it's not a broad church. It's a very narrow church run by careerists. And this is why I come back to, we need renewal within the major party, and we need reform in the minor parties as well. I think both sides of the equation needs to be reformed. But I will come back to the point that we still need to have a crossbench in the Senate, because you can't trust either major party, because both major parties, and it's inherent in any big system. It's not just political parties. It's big government, it's big corporations, it's big super funds, big unions. It's the yes men always climb to the top in these big organisations. And that's why, like, the name of our party was People First, because we want to empower the people and their families, and stand up to the unaccountable authority of the institutions, whether it's big government, big political parties, big media, big super funds, or big corporates, right? Because I've come from a corporate background prior to going into politics, and I recognised very early, because one of the myths in political circles is that somehow the private sector is always efficient. That's not the case at all. Big corporations, privately owned corporations, have the same problem in their bureaucracies, particularly in HR, whereby there's a power struggle within big organisations. And that is why the LNP, given that they love to claim that they believe in freedom of speech and democracy and grassroots representation, actually have to change the way they go about doing things, and that is give everyone a say, because they don't get a say. It takes a lot of effort to get people on state council. And, so it's not, I disagree with you and say anyone can join. Sometimes they get through, but believe you me, the people that control the numbers, they can be controlling. And I'm not sure which branch that person was from. And likewise with Amanda. Amanda got in because she had to go to that seat because that was about the only safe Conservative seat that had the numbers. Had she run for pre-selection in most other seats, she probably wouldn't have won it because the Wets would have blocked her. So there's more to that than meets the eye as well, with Amanda, even though I'm glad that she had the guts to run again. But look, my point was I couldn't, as someone, who had been literally threatened by the LNP when I was a Senate candidate, to be thrown off the ticket because I was calling out the climate change lies, the childcare lies. I called for higher taxes on profits being sent offshore. Didn't say anything that was racist, xenophobic, or anything like that. The LNP, because the ABC did a beat up job on me, threatened to throw me off the Senate ticket before I even got into the Senate. So, and then yet again, when I actually took a stand over the COVID vaccines, I went to see Greg Hunt. I said, Greg, I'm being inundated with young people who are getting the jab, being injured, and Greg just dismissed it, did not take it seriously. I asked for the rollout of the jab to be stopped for young people. I should have, if I went in hard enough, asked for it, for it to be stopped completely. All I asked was for young people to stop it, and many other European countries and Japan and a few others had already done this, wasn't taken seriously. And this was the thing, and the excuse. And when I withheld my vote, I was getting calls from former colleagues saying, Gerard, what are you doing? We've got to win the next election. Sit down and shut up. And I'm like, hang on. People are losing their lives here, getting seriously injured. If you think I'm walking past this, I mean, look, in a big party, some days you got to suck it up, right? You mightn't agree with what the party goes with, but I get it. You're a team player. But we were talking life and death here, or, living healthy and having serious injuries, losing your job, etc., etc. And the Liberal Party backflipped on its own values. And yet again, so, it's net zero, it's COVID, it's the constantly, not listening to its own members that matters. So, look, I don't disagree with your points, but I just don't think you're going to win at the moment because the party is controlled by careerists. And until such time as they give every member a vote, in things like state conference where you elect, and yet again, this matters. So the party president is picked at the annual state conference, and those delegate positions, there's only 6 per branch. The party president every member of the party, all 10,000 members, should be able to vote, for their president, and they're not. It's basically down to the 500 or 600 that attend state conference, and they have to pay for that too, by the way. So yet again, that's five, well, maybe not quite 500 or 600, but it's fairly expensive.
Yeah.
So look, yet again, I don't disagree with your theory. You're trying to do, because I was trying to do it myself 3 years ago. But I will say this though: you're saying that because we're leaving the tent, that's the reason for the Liberal Party going further to the left. I would say that the Liberal Party threw Pauline Hanson out. They didn't quite throw me out, but they may as well have. Likewise with Craig, he was basically pushed out as well. They're going left because that's where they want to go, and I think it's a bit rough for you to be criticising those of us who either got kicked out or left the party. We did it only under. I know Craig didn't want to leave. I certainly know I didn't want to leave. My preference would have been to stay and reform it from within. But at the same time, I wasn't going to sit there and just I literally turned a blind eye to their COVID malfeasance. And it was hard for me to stay in the party and turn around and say to people, join the party after what they did to many people. But when they actually literally went to court saying we don't have to follow our own rules, I was like, you guys aren't serious. Like that is just a cop out. And that is the problem. So, and where are when you say the Liberal Party is a party of government, I'm seriously starting to question that. I won't quite write them off yet, but I'll give you 2 examples of where you really, I think there's really big red flags. Number one was Amelia Harmer in Kooyong. Now, she was the perfect candidate to take on a Teal in what was considered a once safe blue ribbon Liberal seat. She lost to Monique Ryan, even though Monique Ryan, was in the press because her husband stole cornflutes. I wouldn't say that Monique was necessarily, the perfect Teal, but Amelia, who was the sort of perfect candidate to take on a Teal, couldn't win that seat back. Likewise, in Sydney, in Bradfield, the seat held by former Minister Paul Fletcher, Gazelle Capitarian, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, sorry if I'm not, she couldn't hold on to that seat either. She lost it to a Teal. So and they're now down to 24%. Now, you would think that would climb before the next election, but they are precariously on. It's a 50-50 call. Once upon a time, I said, it's just a low vote. They're not coming back. But if you had a decent minor party like Reform is in the UK, notwithstanding they have optional voting, not compulsory voting, the Liberal Party would be gone. Will be very close to going. So, and I still wouldn't write off One Nation climbing further. I won't say they will. They may slip back. They may not. But I'm hearing from ex-Liberals in other states who are just ropeable. They've just literally had enough. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And their membership, I know you seem to think that it's not a bad thing. That if these people, the median age is 72, so that means 50% of people in the party are older than 72. You need people at these polling stations and that. So, they're going to lose members, which is going to make a difference as well. And we've got a lot, People First has got a lot of members in the 30 to 40 year bracket. So we're not quite, we've still got a few young ones, many ex-young LMPs actually. But the Liberal Party, they've got an existential problem as well in the sense that, sure, you'll still get people signing up, but I would argue there's probably just as many people below 50 joining other minors now as what there are with the LNP. I mean, we won't know that for sure. But they're in big trouble, and I can't see New South Wales Liberals in particular. Up here in Queensland, the LNP is in state government. I think they're the only state government across the country. Victoria, they may get back in Victoria. That's a 50-50 call. But yet again, we saw last week in Victoria, they got rid of Brad Batten, who was ahead in the polls. Why? Because he was conservative. And there was no reason to do that. If he'd been polling badly, yes. But that was just a straight out factional hit because the week before, the feds got rid of net zero. So they're now making sure the state governments are run by the wets so that they can, the corporate grifters that control the Liberal Party can continue to get their rent-seeking subsidies. So I agree with you, but it's the question of, and I wish you luck, it's a question of actually getting the party reformed, and it needs to happen sooner rather than later. I'm done.
Definitely. Drew, I'll just continue. I just had 5 points. I think I'll probably start from the end then, just because, Gerard points to a lot of things that are flawed within the LNP. Again, I hope we haven't got the topic confused, at least for the viewers, that no one here is arguing LNP perfect. I mean, if anyone argues LNP perfect, I can give them a laundry list of things that need changing within that party too. And the mechanism in which these things are changed is via the Constitutional Convention. Every 5 years, the LNP people meet. And again, these are delegate positions. You ask anyone in the LNP, it is very easy to become one of the 600 to 800 delegates. There are often branches which don't even fill their spots that are available. And these are spots where you're able to go in and be a part of that change to change the Constitution. Now, Gerard also mentioned the State Council, and he mentions that there's a large, glut of them, which is like apparatchiks and people who are not elected, as delegates, that kind of thing. Well, if you looked at elected MPs, a number of them are elected to be, they're pre-selected by the party. They beat Labor and the Greens at the election in their seat, and then they sit on state council. So invariably, they are still being elected in the most democratic of ways. Now, yes, he points to, anomalies where there are people who don't face a fair pre-selection, and there are people who are just thrown in there, like Susan Lee, the federal Liberal Party leader. But again, we cannot let the exception be the rule. And there is vast majority of pre-selections that at least I see are democratic, even in the state of New South Wales. And I'm very glad that Gerard brought up the case of Bradfield. My good friend Warren Mundine actually ran for that pre-selection against Giselle Captarian. He lost. Warren Mundine lost to Giselle Captarian, who, in my opinion, wants the Liberal Party to be more Labor light. He lost on a vote of 200 to 171. Now, I think the mindset of Gerard and other people in One Nation, for instance, is to throw their hands up in the sky, say, oh, they won't even pre-select Warren Mundine. The whole thing's a basket case. Let's leave. Let's form new parties, right? And all the people who want to change the Liberal Party to be Labor light are saying, fantastic, keep doing it. Keep doing it, Gerard, right? Or you could look at it the other way, the glass half full approach, which is, hang on, he lost 200 to 171. Let's just get 30 more people in the room, and then we could have had Warren Mundine on the ballot. And then if he won, and I do believe he would have beaten Nicolette Bowl or whatever her name is, the Teal down in Bradfield, he genuinely could have won that election, and we could have had someone like Warren Mundine in the federal parliament, who I think would make a really good contribution. He also makes the point that One Nation are ahead in the polls. I think, in my opinion, this is very premature. One, because we are 2.5 years away from the next federal election. And if you actually look at any of the state polling, namely, and I'm glad Gerard mentioned Victoria, they are not in a position to form any kind of government down there at all. And even in the state of Queensland, we've seen recent polling in Queensland come out. One Nation are not in a position at all to win even any state seats in Queensland. By the way, One Nation, Queensland, Ipswich, Pauline Hanson, this is her strongest state, and they are in a position to win absolutely no seats on a state level. Being predicted to win a federal seat 2.5 years out is, in my opinion, very pie in the sky kind of thing. Go ahead, Drew.
One second, Barclay. This was actually a point raised to me by Leo Puglisi, who's watching. He points out that based on current polling, One Nation would be on track for winning possibly as many as 10 lower house seats. How would you respond to that?
Well, in my opinion, and I've spoken very briefly to Leo about this, I believe he's applying standardized polling to a lot of his seat-by-seat polling. So a lot of these polls, when you see news poll come out 52-48 or 56-44, that kind of thing, they're not looking seat-by-seat. They're looking at a nationwide aggregate. That's really important because I think that applying a nationwide swing to an individual seat where there's many different factors is quite important. And I also do think that there is going to be a bit of a hollowing out. I do believe that the Liberals won't go with Susan Lee to the next federal election. And that's something I also wanted to touch on, Drew. I think, yes, if things were to continue as they are now, right in the week where two of the most populated states in Australia literally just had leadership spills, where Susan Lee's at unprecedented, unpopular, or maybe not unprecedented, but she's unpopular, and where you've had all these hasty dumped, price dumped, not from the party, but from the front bench, how are they not lower than 24%? The fact that they're still in the top two after all of these stuff-ups makes me think, boy, oh boy, we are definitely in a two-party system. The fact that they're still coming second after all of these comical errors after error. The other thing about Susan Lee that I really want to harp on about is the fact that the vote for her to be leader was 29 to 25. Now, you can look at that two ways. This would be the minor party approach way to look at it, to say, wow, the Liberal Party are dead. Can you believe that they thought Susan Lee was their best leader? That's ridiculous. Or you can look at it the other way and say, wow, 25 of Susan's colleagues, I'm led to believe it's even more than that now, do not want her to be the federal leader. If we were to get involved in local pre-selections and that 29 to 25 becomes 28 to 26 and it keeps changing, then all of a sudden, who do you have as leader? Andrew Hastie. Now, we can play a no true Scotsman game and say, well, where was Andrew Hastie on XYZ? Where was Andrew Hastie, on all these issues? But in my opinion, I would be able to look at the nightly news of an evening, look at Andrew Hastie on the TV and say, yep, I'm pretty sure he's got my interests at heart. Like, I'm satisfied with Andrew Hastie as Prime Minister. Again, we don't have to play this, well, he doesn't share my view on bicycle helmets and the legality of bicycle helmets. No, there is some trade-offs, right, with anything. And I think I would be able to look at Andrew Hastie and say, yep, that's my guy. And we are so close to being able to do that in the coalition. And I don't believe that you benefit the efforts to do that by joining a minor party. For instance, in my state of Queensland, there was a number of seats lost by the LNP to Labor, namely Bonner, namely Dixon, Petrie. These are all seats where, if Ford as well, if we have enough people voting in those pre-selections, and there'll be a tight contest and a number of them between someone who thinks that we need to be of the Susan Lee mold and someone who thinks we need to be in the Andrew Hastie mold. If we get in behind the person who believes they want to see the party in an Andrew Hastie mold, and then we go to the next election, and I I think it'll be pretty insurmountable to beat Labor just to the next election, right? We could then have them voting internally to make Andrew Hastie the leader. That is how politics is done, and it can be done on a level of, as I said before, only 100 people are rocking up to these pre-selections. You can continue being one of 100,000 voters in your electorate every election cycle. Like, yeah, I guess you have a say, one of 100,000. Or you could be one of 100 people in that room deciding whether the next candidate for Petrie or Bonner is someone who is going to be stand up and represent your values. For the vast majority of people in Australia, like let's say more than 99%, they will face, in my state of Queensland at least, there is no election in 2026 or 2027 until the next 2028 election. So all that pent-up anger you have for our current politicians, right, and you channel it by sharing on Facebook or walking around George Street in the CBD marching against immigration, none of it will be remembered when we come to the election in 2028. Or you could join as a member of the Liberal National Party, the coalition in any other Australian state, and you can be involved in pre-selections, which, yes, will be happening in 2026 and 2027 and actually making influence that way. And it's also a way to make an influence without putting your own face out there, without having to, share and out yourself in public, without losing like friends. This is all kind of confidential information, and it's very, very easy and tangible to do. Now, Gerard makes this point that we would have the minor parties would somehow be destroying the two-party system if we had optional voting. In my opinion, that is the biggest if you've ever heard. If my grandmother had handlebars and wheels, she would be a bicycle. But she is not a bicycle because she does not have handlebars and wheels. If we can't just have this if when it literally underpins the entire system. Compulsory voting is our system, and until we have a major party that can get into government and change these rules, we will still have compulsory voting. And I say, instead of yelling at the clouds from the outside and saying, oh, if only we had optional voting, if only we did, I'd say let's get into a major party and change that. I'm 100% a believer in optional voting. We definitely need optional voting. And the other point that I'll just raise, and I think Gerard made it at the start, and then I'll pass off because I know I ramble a lot, is Gerard made the point that ultimately you still do need party members. Well, in my opinion, the LNP went to the state election last year with their lowest proportion of financial members per capita of the population, right? I think there's 10,000 out of the 5 million people that are in Queensland, 5.5 million that are in Queensland. That's the lowest percentage in not just the existence of the LNP, but also the Liberals and the Nationals combined in Queensland ever. And they just swept to government with a healthy 10-seat majority. So I do not see any correlation between membership numbers and ability to form government, right? So just because the LNP are depleting members, I do not think that affects their electoral viability at all. And by the same token, I don't think 5,000 people joining One Nation tomorrow will increase their electoral viability either, right? Because the two-party system is inbuilt, and no groundswell of joining minor parties will change that. That's what they want you to think. That's what the people who currently want the Liberal Party to go be Labor light want you to think. They want you to think that you can change the status of the country by joining a minor party. But I'm here to tell you that I don't think that that's the way it works. So that's, in my opinion, that's my contribution there.
Thank you, Barclay. I just want to quickly say, guys, we've got 120 people watching live on YouTube and another 100 watching live on Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, please consider subscribing and please leave a like on the video. It helps us reach more people. We've got about 50 likes on the video, but 120 watching. So if you can leave a like, YouTube will recommend us to more people and we can have more people watching. Thank you so much. Rennick, please go in and I'll be very interested to see your response.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. So, Barclay, you've just said that you think that majors can win elections now without members or with less and less members. That is the rub right there, because if that is the case, this is not what we do. We do not want this to be the case. And it is the case. You're right. They're getting away with it because they can rely on their parliamentary wing who get taxpayer-funded dollars. And we've seen that just this year. I called it out earlier this year when they changed the electoral funding bill, where they've now paid themselves, they've lifted their pay from $3.38 a vote to $5 a vote, because their primary votes have slipped from mid-40s down to low 30s. And that's a direct result of their weak and insipid incompetence in government. But if you think it's a good thing that a party You can have parties that are running this country that have next to no members. That means they're being run by party apparatchiks. That is a bad thing. And the fact that you would sit there and try and argue that that's a good thing, we don't need members, I think has just meant you've lost the whole debate tonight, because democracy is all about having people turn up. The world is run by those who turn up. We need to be able to hold our parliamentary members accountable. It wasn't that long ago. It's no longer the case. You used to have 60 safe Labor seats, 60 safe coalition seats, and you might have, say, 30 marginal seats that would determine the result on the day of the general election. What that meant was, when you had, 60 safe seats each side, 120 of the 150 parliamentarians in Parliament weren't really decided on the day of the general election. They were decided on the day of the pre-selection inside those rooms, like you say, of less than 100 people. So now you're saying that we want to have these MPs selected by, say, 38 Harvard, less than 50 people. And I know that there's some FDCs, FECs in Queensland where some of our federal MPs are literally picked by less than 50 people. This is a really bad thing, because it means there's going to be less scrutiny, so that when the MPs do go to Canberra, they'll do exactly what they're told, rather than actually listening to the people, because they know they're going to be put there by the handful of party members that represent less than 1% of the population. And this is what we're trying to do at People First. I'm not sitting out there saying we're going to form government, right? What I'm saying is that we are going, our three KPIs are increasing the number of members we have. So we want to get to over 5,000 by next year, and then by 10,000 after that. We want to get more money in the bank, and we want to be able to get our message out there. Okay, the money obviously so that we can, promote our message, because we don't have the luxury of having a communications budget like the major parties do. We don't have the luxury of having, incumbent MPs to get themselves in the news. But we know that what we do believe in, and we've got a very vibrant and active base. And I, having come from the LNP, I can tell you we've got a much higher percentage of active members, even though we don't have the numbers of the major parties. We're up to about 3,300 members, not a lot. But still, most of those, I would say about 50 of them are very, very active. 50% of them, sorry. So this is what we are trying to do, because, and Pauline Hanson, I'll call One Nation out on this. Pauline, and this is a classic example this week of Pauline carrying on about the burqa. She's been a senator now for 9 years. She knew what she was doing was a stunt, right? Now, this isn't whether or not you agree with whether or not the burqa should be banned. There is a way to do things in this country, and there is a way to do things in the Senate. But let me tell you this, that the Senate is controlled by those who have the numbers. If Pauline was genuinely serious about fixing this country, she would have worked on getting numbers years ago. She has never done that. She has always played the short game, whereby she just does the stunt. She never pushes for solutions or substance. Unlike both people that Matt Canavan, who we both regard very highly. Matt will do the work. He's got a young family. I can vouch for this. He is always on the road. He is always out, like he's an Energizer Bunny in Canberra. He's using the procedures in Parliament, in the Senate, to get things pushed. Pauline doesn't do that. She doesn't get away. She just does a cheap stunt. Likewise with her whole, I really care about Australia. She actually emigrated to the UK back in 2011. Don't tell me she's passionate about Australia. She was ready to walk when she thought her political career was over. But the point is that if you actually want to care about your country, look, my days as a politician, it's highly unlikely I'll get back in. I'll keep trying. But what I know I can do is actually fix the lack of corporate governance and inside the political parties. And if we are just the tail wagging the dog, and at this stage I'll say we've had success, the fact that we've now got One Nation recruiting people and having starting branches, which has then forced the Liberal Party to start letting Conservatives in, and so be it. But yet again, I come down to, this isn't a case of having the perfect, having a major party. You've got to hold the major party to account. And I'll call you out too on the whole state election last year. I know a number of people that got vetted out and weren't. David Christofouli handpicked some of his own candidates because he wanted, and other hardworking members were not allowed to run in the seats they wanted to run in. They got vetted out. So yet again, you're saying it's the exception, not the rule. I would disagree. You may be right that the majority of I think it's look. it might be the exception, not the rule, but there are a lot of cases, and I know this, whereby and it's in the marginal ones you've got to remember too, right? So there's safe seats and the incumbents are protected. In the seats they're dead red, what the Liberals will call a dead red, the Labor seats, they generally don't care so much about who they run, but in the marginal seats, they will play games to get who they want in there. So yet again, I disagree with you, the fact that you can just turn up, you'll be automatically allowed to join the Liberal Party, and you'll be automatically given a vote to vote on, have an equal representation, one vote, one value, because you're not. But I will come back to this. The one thing I believe in is that we need active grassroots party. Now, ideally, in a perfect world, we'd have one major party and one minor party, similar to what the left have got. I mean, not that they're idealistically perfect, but that system on the left is a better organised structure. But they have to be active. They have to be democratic. And One Nation isn't democratic as well. We've just seen that, where Pauline's appointed her own Queensland staffer as a senator for New South Wales. Now, if you're a member of One Nation in New South Wales, you should be ropeable that A, you weren't allowed to actually nominate to be a senator, and B, you weren't then given the vote to actually vote on who should be the senator for New South Wales. So I agree, Pauline's not the solution, because she can't even use the rules within the Senate to her advantage to get a point across. She can't influence decision makers, and she won't actually give her own members a say within her own party. She's been milking it, whether or not, for her own career purposes or other purposes that we don't know because the accounts aren't disclosed, for the last 30 years. So yet again, if I can improve the corporate governance, and this is what we want to do at People First, and introduce good policy, no other party has the monetary and taxation policies that we do, because I can tell you for a fact, as someone that was Secretary of the Finance Backbench Committee in the Liberal Party in the Coalition for 5 years, no one in that party has a clue about our taxation and monetary system, and that is alarming. Not only that, when they worked, when I did sit down and explain it to them on the weekends, we were stuck in COVID throughout. On the weekends we were stuck in Canberra throughout COVID. They none of them were interested in actually doing anything about it. The fact that we have so many rorts in the Tax Act that favoured foreigners, the Liberal Party, like the Labor Party, are just sitting there, not doing anything about the fact that Australians are being ripped off. But anyway, I'm going slightly off topic, so I'll end there.
I want to quickly say, just really quickly, it is an interesting point Rennick makes about Pauline's party. They make a lot of money. They make a lot of money in public funding, millions of dollars, and no one knows. The accounts within that party are not open to anybody. It's run like a dictatorship.
Mm. I guess I'll chime in there.
You go, Barclay.
Yeah, and I think that the commonality, of course, in what you've just said then, Drew, and what Gerard said, I think for nearly half of what he's just said then, was being critical of One Nation, who's obviously on the rise now. And I say, okay, let's presuppose everything you've just said is true. So what? Where are we now? Where did we get to then? Did we change a policy? Was something repealed? We're still going to have 5,000 migrants arrive tomorrow. We're still going to have crazy net zero policies passed. We're still going to have abortion on demand here in the Queensland State Parliament. This is, in my opinion, a sideshow battle that we are consistently getting entertained by. This is essentially the tabloid gossip of politics of, is whatever's Kim Kardashian and Kanye West doing at the moment. We're being literally distracted by that, of the whole Pauline and Barnaby thing. Is he going? Isn't he going, right? Oh, Pauline, did she actually have that meeting with the gun rights lobby? What about the burqa stunt? We are literally being distracted by the biggest sideshow in politics, and it's happening amongst the people who are supposed to be the right-wing leaders here in this country. And why do they do that? Because they want us to be distracted by it and not getting involved in Liberal Party pre-selections and branches, right? Now, I have this thing on top of that where I don't like to punch right. Gerard, I've said multiple times, is someone who I deeply respect. I think that, I was someone who's vaccine affected, and Gerard stood up for me in that moment when Scott Morrison did not. And Gerard Rennick did. And that's why I will never punch to the right. But I will certainly point out to viewers when I think there is a better way, and that's because I've looked at all the facts. And I'm saying that as someone who has been suspended from the LNP more than Gerard has. Now, I think there's one thing that I really wanted to harp on because I hope it didn't come across this way. Gerard said at the start of what he was saying then before that he was saying that I thought it was a good thing that 50 people are voting in these pre-selections. I do not think it's a good thing. I'm stating it as a matter of fact and presenting it to you not as a positive thing, but as an
I wasn't
opportunity.
inferring you said it was a good thing. Sorry to cut you off there, Barclay. You said that major parties don't need members to get elected, and that's what worries me, is that they don't get have members. They're basically getting there on the back of taxpayer funding, and the incumbency of being a major party. That's not how they should be getting there. They should be getting there because they are listening to their members and doing what their members want, not what the apparatchiks and the puppet masters say. Sorry to cut you off there.
No, definitely agree. And I wanted to reiterate that what you've just said then, I wasn't viewing it as a positive thing. I was stating it as a matter of fact thing. We can all say how, it's ridiculous that we don't have optional voting here in this country, right? And I can say, well, we do have optional voting. That's not me supporting optional voting. That's me basically saying that, hey, this is the system. We're mature adults. Let's adjust to the groundwork, right? The fact that I have to walk a kilometre to the bus stop every morning, right? I don't bemoan that. I just say, well, I've got to do it, right? I'll do it. And that's just something that I present as matter of fact. It is matter of fact that we have this system, and I'm talking about how we operate within it. Now, Gerard raised the point that in a lot of pre-selections, there will be some kind of intervention that will vet other candidates out, particularly in safe seats. Well, the most hotly contested pre-selection I can say that I've ever been at was in the federal seat of Bowman. Now, that was it's a seat out in the Redlands. It's only ever in the last 20 years, at least 25 years, I think, it's only ever been held by the LNP. And I think given demographic changes, it probably only ever will be held by the LNP. It's quite a safe seat. Now, there's a 5-horse field. A mayor was running. I won't say the name, but I think there was someone who was very favourable to apparatchiks at HQ, Gerard, who was running. And that individual did not win. In fact, it was actually won by someone who is in many ways a bit of an outsider in Henry Pike. And now he is someone who, I think he's very publicly on the record about this, is very outspokenly against immigration, very outspokenly against net zero, and super in favour of Andrew Hastie. Hang on, so this is someone who represents the antithesis of what supposed moderate liberals stand for, and he won a democratic ballot, fair and square, against someone who is apparently the golden individual from the party head office running for that Bowman pre-selection. This is living proof that even in some of the most, lopsided circumstances, and I know that a lot of people in the chat might be having no idea what I'm referring to, Henry Pike is an incredible man. He's a federal politician out in the Redlands area for the seat of Bowman. He won that pre-selection fair and square. These are outcomes which can be replicated. And again, it doesn't take that many people to rock up. I'm not saying that is a good thing. I'm presenting that to the viewers as an opportunity. Drew, I think you've mentioned a couple of times that we had 120 people on this stream. 120 people, even if they were spread across a few electorates, could genuinely make a difference if they were financial members of the LNP, just rocking up to that one meeting where they vote in pre-selections. And now all of this, you might be thinking, oh, Barclay's just going on the same stuff. He's just harping on. The reason why I harp on is because I'm yet to hear an alternative. I'm yet to hear the name of a federal seat that can be challenged by really any right-wing minor party that gets us on that path. Remember what I said at the start of the call. 76 is the magic number of seats that we need if we are going to end mass immigration here in Australia. 47 seats for any pro-lifers is what we are going to need if we are going to see change on the abortion laws here in Queensland. Now, a lot of people will talk to the fact that Christopher Foley came out as being pro-choice. Well, as I'm led to believe, right, there was a party room meeting prior to that decision where they essentially talked about whether they would stand with a guillotining debate on abortion or allowed debate on abortion. And there was a rough 40 to 60 split in the room. And they all agreed beforehand that they would leave the room all being in unity. That is, as Gerard points out, that is what happens in a major party. There is sometimes where you do have to get in line. And often it just comes to where the center of gravity is, right? Now, you could look at the Federal Liberal Party from the outside and say, wow, they're all behind this Susan Lee girl. But then you actually go into what the internal numbers were, 29 to 25, and you say, wow, it's anything but unified behind her. There's actually a lot of people that are behind the other guy, Andrew Hastie, who stands for things that far better represent my values. And if I can have any kind of impact in politics, well, I want to see if I can add to that 25 column and get that above the 29 column so that we have Andrew Hastie leading a major party in Australia as opposed to Susan Lee. That to me is the most easiest way to maximize your involvement in politics. And you can point out there's flaws, you can point out caveats, you can point out that it's a 1 kilometre walk to the bus stop and it's not ideal, right? But what's the alternative? There is no other alternative that I'm seeing that can concretely lead to a path where we say, hey, this law's in and this law's out. Passing and repealing laws. I'm offering up a path to people to be involved in a process which allows you to elect a party of government which can pass and repeal any laws that you like and pass any laws that you do like. The question is whether people just have, in my opinion, the maturity to take it. The conventional approach of a lot of minor parties is to, let's say, look at a car that's in a ditch and yell at the car for being in the ditch. Well, hang on. Someone drove it into the ditch, right? It's the drivers of the Liberal Party that have driven it into this ditch, right? It's not the Liberal Party itself that has driven into the ditch, right? You know, when Jamie Whincup wins the V8 supercars on the Gold Coast, no one goes ahead and pats his car and says, car, great driving. No, Jamie Whincup drove the car, right? And if you think he's a shit driver, put him in the passenger seat, chuck him out. Personnel changes. Personnel is politics, right? And I truly do believe there was a quote that I come across the other day, and I'll end on this, is that losers talk about strategy, professionals talk about logistics. Logistically, I do not see how a minor party can form government, and even if they can't form government, how they can influence a party of government into making laws and repealing bad laws. And that's ultimately my conclusion, and that's why I think the action item, at least that I'd hope for any conservative watching this, is to join a major party, and that party being the coalition, because I think that's the best way in which you're able to be involved.
Interesting. Let's have Rennick's response.
Thanks, Drew. Okay, Barclay, there is an alternative and it's called People First, and I'll tell you why. When you said there isn't a party capable, we actually managed to man most of our pre-poll booths with about 3 months. So when you say people talk about strategy, and what was that expression about logistics, we managed to man our booths. We have managed to start 30 branches within 6 months of myself, well, not even 6 months, probably 4 months after I stopped being a senator. We have already got, we're having something like 10 to 15 branch meetings a month. We are moving. We've got both the policies and we've got the logistics. This is something that One Nation has never done before. They've badly let down their followers over the last 25 years because they wouldn't have branches. But we are different, and we are going to continue to go, and I will continue to go and keep this party moving forward, where we continue to grow membership, we continue to give people a vote, we continue to bring up policy at branch meetings, and we will keep pushing through. Now, whether or not we end up forming a government one day, I can't say. But I do believe that we are capable of actually winning a Senate spot in the Senate, and hopefully multiple Senate spots in the Senate. And once we get that foothold, with the right guidance and with the right, logistics, because I'm not into the highfalutin, ambiguous ideological stuff. I'm into actually getting real things done. We've currently built a CRM. We've had a couple of members build a CRM that is fantastic. It's better than anything the Liberal Party ever built. So we are what you call disruptors in politics. And these things happen, Kodak, people thought, 30 years ago, Kodak was invincible, and it's gone the way of the dodo, video stores, you name it, right? So things will change. We've seen it change in the UK. It looks like Reform will do very well at the next election. There is a genuine vibe out there for a serious change. I think, I'm not writing the Liberal Party / coalition off, but I think they're in serious trouble. And I think you're wrong. One Nation are currently polling in a number of seats where they could actually beat the National Party and the Liberal Party, particularly in right. In Capricornia is another one. Now, I'm not saying they will, and I'm not saying that vote won't slip, but they are in a contestable position right now in a number of seats across Australia. Well, I'll say a number 5 or 6, but it is a start. And if they got their act together, I think they could do a lot better. And they should have done a lot better before now. And I would argue the reason why they're starting to get their act together is because we're threatening them, whereas they've never had any serious competition. It's been enough for Pauline and Malcolm just to whinge. And I agree with you. That's what Pauline and Malcolm have always done, is they sit there and they whinge like this week with the burqa stunt. Just get on with it and actually do the groundwork, on the ground. And that's where I think things are changing. I think people are really us putting pressure on One Nation, and now One Nation lifting their game is then putting pressure back on the Liberals. And you've got Matt. I mean, even Matt's talking about it now. He did a post the other night on Twitter, Matt Canavan, telling people to join up to Nats, right? I've never seen him do that before. So, Matt's genuinely, good mate of mine. Got a lot of time for Matt, top guy. But he's genuinely concerned about what's happening as well. So, look, I'll leave that. The other thing I'll just say is when you say no one would have heard of Craig Kelly, Pauline Hanson, Bob Carter, because had we not joined the coalition, that's true. But we didn't become famous because we joined the coalition. Had I kept my mouth shut throughout COVID, no one would know who I am. The reason why I'm known, and same for Craig Kelly and Pauline, was that we actually had the guts to speak up at a time. I still think Pauline was wrong in 1996, by the way. We didn't have an immigration problem in 1996. There was less than 100,000 immigrants in 1996, and most of them were from England and New Zealand and South Africa. So
I actually think compared to right now, 1996 would be a blessing from heaven compared to where we are right now.
She was wrong. People saying, "Oh, she's been right for 30 years." No, that's not true. The problem with immigration started in 2008 when Kevin Rudd allowed foreign students to buy housing. And that's when they started to use immigration to mask the enormous debt levels as a result of what Paul Keating did in 1985. I'm happy to come back on your show another night, Drew, and talk about that. But regardless of whether or not she was right or wrong, it's the fact that we went up against the Liberal Party and they basically refused to be the broad church. And let's not forget, we've currently got a member on executive, George Brandis, who writes in the Sydney Morning Herald. He did an article a couple of weeks ago where he was having a crack at Hastie.
He's like a socialist. His article attacking Hastie was like a socialist.
Yeah, and he attacks. He's attacked other people throughout the years, and he's allowed to stay in the Liberal Party. If any of us had done that, we'd have been thrown out or threatened. And that's what I mean. It just comes back to the constant double standards. And the fact of the matter is the Liberal Party is controlled by the moderates or the wets, or I call them the bedwetters. And until such time as you get rid of the bedwetters out of the party, and, I don't know when that will happen, but that is when the day the Liberal Party jettons those particular people, and they should, because the teal seats, for all intensive purposes, they're not getting them back for a long time. They're not going to. I just can't see a way out for them. I mean, I won't rule it out and say that they will never form government again. But here's the other risk, right? Is that and I know you're saying, they've still got the second highest primary vote. Yeah, 24%. I think you're missing the point there. The direction is down, Barclays, and another 3% off to them and onto One Nation, and suddenly One Nation are in front of them, right?
3%. That's pretty extraordinary. If only 4% were to go.
The other 3% of Conservative voters change their mind. That's it. The Liberals are coming second to One Nation. But I forgot what I was going to say now. Oh, that's it. But if it looks like there's going to be a coalition One Nation alliance at the next election, that is going to a lot of swinging voters will not vote for Pauline Hanson. Labor will run the biggest scare campaign saying, do you want Pauline Hanson to be Prime Minister or Deputy Prime Minister? And regardless of your views on Pauline, that will be a scare campaign Labor will run. So Labor will love it if One Nation are nipping at the Liberal Party's heel, because they'll say, well, the journalists will be asking, well, are you going to do a formal alliance with One Nation? Are you going to do a formal alliance with One Nation? And then, they're going to basically, and then, the problem is, and then I'll quote Howard, how Howard put One Nation last, and they're going to get themselves into all sorts of knots over, whether or not they want to be with Pauline or not Pauline. So they'll actually, run the risk of even losing more votes the more they hop into bed with One Nation, who is, while it's a popular, its popularity is rising, it's still a very polarising party. And you have to remember that at this stage, sure, they've got 18% of the vote, but that's still 82% of people that aren't voting for them. And I remember in COVID, I'll tell you a couple of stories. So on those rallies, I'd ask people in the UAP why they didn't join One Nation. I said, this is when I was still in the Liberal Party. I said, look, why don't you just join One Nation? And they go, we'll never vote for Pauline. Right. So these were similar, these are UAP, Trumpet of Patriot voters, Family First voters. They just won't vote for Pauline. And then there was, other people who were Liberal voters that were furious with Morrison, they actually went and voted for the Greens. And I said, well, why didn't you vote for One Nation and stay on the right? Said, well, you'll never vote for Pauline. So this is the risk that if the Liberals get too close to Pauline, and they are, well, they'll have to if they want to form government, then they run the risk of actually losing more of their primary vote to people that just don't want to get into bed with Pauline. So
she's the, by some polling metrics, she's like the second best known politician in Australia. So like normally, I remember seeing polling data showing that Pauline is much better known than, for example, Susan Ley, the leader of the opposition party.
Oh, yeah.
And like she's known by everyone. Everyone has an opinion on Pauline, and there's just going to be forever, like there's going to be like just 50% or 60% of the population that will just never in a million years. Like they already made up their mind years ago. That's a big problem for the Liberal Party.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out over the next few years. Obviously, if Andrew Hastie was to become leader, I think he'll definitely pull some of that vote back again. But yet again, many people will go, look, yeah, we love Andrew, and I get on well with Andrew. But can he control the party when you've got the Wets constantly undermining the party? Will Andrew get in and then basically be blackballed? Because this is the problem with the coalition as well. The Wets make up about probably 25% of the entire numbers of the coalition MPs, maybe 30%. But because the Nats are split off from the Liberals, and most of the Nats, even though a lot of them are now Wets, are not in the same party room, you then end up with the situation that the Conservative vote is split again inside the coalition between the Nats and the Conservative Liberals, and often, therefore, then the moderate Liberals will outnumber the Conservative Liberals, or they'll generally bribe a couple of Conservatives over with the position of a ministry. So, the other alternative that we haven't discussed tonight, and it's something worth discussing. I've got to hop off very soon because my battery's about to run out. But is do the Conservative Liberals lead the National Party? Leave the Liberals join a National Party? The Nationals drop regional out of their name, and then they run, with someone like a Matt Canavan, who can't be little proud, nationally, just on a and basically become the Workers' Party, and taking that middle ground, which is why, I'll just put this in. I've copped a bit of heat on my social media, and I'm happy to take it, whereby the Catters are being criticised because they support Labor. They haven't supported Labor in the last few elections, but Bob Catter is a proud member of the CFMEU, and he says, it's not because I support the thugs there. He said, I used to work in the mines and I support blue-collar workers. And I was being trolled by One Nation people when I called out Pauline for preferencing the Liberals above the Catters in Hinchinbrook. But, and people first are like this, we proudly support blue-collar workers. We support small business people, and we support our farmers in regional areas as well. We're about the little guy, and if the Nats would reposition themselves as being, and this is what Bjorka Peterson did, as just being for the workers and the little guy, that's the ground that needs to be taken. But unfortunately, both the Liberal and Labor Party always bend over to the big end of town, and this is why they're ultimately losing votes. And Barclay, it's not fair for you to blame us. I tried to stay in the party and get it to do the right, and got and tried to get it to do the right thing, as did Peter Dutton, by the way. He wanted them to hold that pre-selection again as well. But they are, unfortunately, in my view, systemically corrupted because they are controlled by the big end, and so we need to see.
I'm trying to say that they are absolutely stoked that you think that, Gerard.
They are stoked.
Yeah, they would be stoked that you think it's all too hard to influence things from within. Like, they are definitely glad that you've started a minor party.
No, but I would argue I am influencing, because basically we've got One Nation, and as a result of that, I would argue that Dark Hawks let those people back into the party because or the people that they were blocking, because they knew they'd end up joining us. So I disagree with you to say that we're not influencing the party. I think
Guys,
that they're, yeah.
I want to say, right, so I know Rennick may have to leave soon. I thought, how long do you reckon you've got, Rennick? Because I would love to do some questions and answers. Okay, I'd love to do some questions and answers from the audience. And look, we've got 110 people. So here's the thing: if people want to do super chats, I'll try to give them priority. If people put $5 to a question, I'll try to give them priority. Otherwise, please just put in the questions. I want to try and put some to Rennick and Barclay while Rennick's still here. I wish we had some more time because this has been a really interesting conversation and I've actually really enjoyed it. But please, guys, we've got 110 people watching live on YouTube. Leave a like, but also please comment a question. Do a super chat. You can put a $5 super chat. Put in a question. I want to ask, put questions and answers to Rennick. Here's a good one. I mean, I'll start maybe. Why do you reckon Pauline is now polling at 20%? I'm pretty surprised by that because she is. I don't think she's done a good job in the Senate. But obviously, immigration's become such a big issue, and people are pretty demoralized by how tight the grip the moderates have over the Liberal Party. I'm interested. What's your analysis of this, Rennick?
Oh, that's easy. I mean, she's against net zero and she's against high immigration. And they're the two biggest issues out there at the moment. And she's got the guts to, call it out. And I'll give her points for that. I don't think she's got the skill set to necessarily solve it. So, for example, you can say we can drop immigration to zero tomorrow, but then you're going to have all these aged care centres and everything. But it's going to take a few years. We can cut the student visas and the bridging visas pretty much straight away. But the working visas, it'll take a few years to retrain our own workforce. As well as that, we've also got to lift the birth rate. So there's going to be a bit of a transition there. I don't think she's got the skills to fix that. The net zero stuff, start building coal-powered fire stations yet again. She wouldn't know how to finance it. I do. But she's right on these issues, and they're the two biggest issues at the moment. And her slogan is, she says what other people are thinking, is what's getting her there, because as people say, she's prepared to say what they're thinking, and that's the reason for her success. Whether or not she can form government, and this week was a good example of why she can't, because whilst you may not disagree with her position on the burqa, you got to do it. You got to be able to influence the decision makers, and a good example of that.
It was childish the way she did it.
Yeah. Look, a good example of that it used to really grind my gears. I'd spend 15 minutes in the chamber talking about the biochemistry of the vaccine and why the biochemistry of this particular drug was different to prior vaccines, in the sense that it would generate an autoimmune response, generate T-cell response, which generate an autoimmune response, et cetera, et cetera. And then Pauline would follow up. So I was trying to talk in a way, using what I'd learned when my unfinished biochemistry degree, to try so that people, so I could try and influence the decision makers who understand this stuff. She'd come into the chamber and say, "I'm not putting that shit in my body." Now that would get the headline news, but the problem is she didn't influence anyone, right? All she was doing was polarizing people, and then the people that were against it say, "Oh, well, see, we told you they're just anti-vaxxers," right? Well, no, my children are vaccinated, but I'm trying to explain to people. So this is, I can see why her popularity is high, and it would be a good thing if it was a Matt Canavan who had that popularity, because I know Matt could, he's got the skill set to actually get into government and change things. I don't think Pauline rarely goes to chambers. She never went to estimates in 6 years. I was
50% estimate, 50% attendance record or something terrible like that.
Yeah, and no, she only went to estimates this time for the first time because I badgered her out on X about not going to estimates. So she made a big song and dance about being there. I mean, most other politicians, senators, just get on with it.
Estimates is the best part of being a senator. Why would you not want to be there? It's just so dumb.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Yeah. But and it was because she can't think, right? This is why she does the stunts and not the actual, explain with substance. And if you can't ask questions of ministers and the bureaucrats as a senator, how are you going to do it when you're prime minister? You've got to be thinking on your feet. But look, the reason...
If you compare it to Nigel
to be prime minister, you have to win a lower house seat too. She's in the Senate. She can't be the prime minister.
No, that's right. Yeah, that's true.
That's that's not even like a technicality. That's like a, a lot of people say Pauline for PM. It's the most misguided statement ever.
I think there's such a big gap between Nigel Farage and Pauline. I think Nigel is just Nigel presents himself as a government in waiting, and Pauline is so different to that.
Yeah, and can I just jump in there again? Sorry to cut you off there.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Nigel Farage was asked 10 or 15, I think it was maybe a decade ago, you're going to have a run for Prime Minister or something. He said, no, we're not ready yet. We've got to get the systems and the structures in place within our party. And that's what has to happen, and we do need, this is why, like one of my roles is not just to sort of try and make the Liberal Party get back to its grassroots, but also fix up the whole mess on the right side as well. But, that, like reform, it took them a decade, and they had to get the right people in there. That's what has to happen as well. Now, One Nation might be able to do that. My understanding of it is Gina Rinehart's backing her big time. Personally, I don't think Barnaby's going to help the solution at all. It'll just reinforce the view that you want new, fresh people in the party that can portray a whole new image. And this is the problem with One Nation. They'll never outrun their racism tag, rightly or wrongly. They'll never. That's why they need to, you need a new brand that doesn't have, the racism tag, rightly or wrongly. You need to be able, when it comes to immigration, you need to be able to talk about the economic reasons why we got into the high immigration and how the government and Treasury in particular have used it to mask their own incompetence. That's what you need to be calling out. And there's ways to do that and use corporate speak or, speak in a professional and polished manner rather than an irrational manner rather than this immature, emotional, let's throw a wobbly and pull a stunt. And this is where One Nation, well, let's see what happens. I mean, people are pretty revved up at the moment, so I'm not going to say they're going to go backwards in the next 2 years because I'm not. If the Liberal Party don't lift their game, I'm not sure they will. And I do think, regardless of what happens between now and the next election, they will be competitive in some lower house seats.
You know what they actually would need? You look at reform right now in the UK. They've managed to get some amazing defections. Like they got Danny Kruger, who is a genuinely amazing intellectual. They got James Orr, who is a Cambridge academic, who's like a great intellectual. I don't think like One Nation has anyone of that caliber at all in terms of like, in terms of academic.
But can we have the other thing we've missed tonight in all this discussion, Barclay, about not getting lower house seats is the Teals have. The Teals are they're not taking seats off Labor, they're taking seats off Liberals. And the Teals have shown how to do things. I mean, we probably quite inappropriately have not discussed their success. Because what are they up to? 8 or 9 seats now in the lower house, mainly from the Liberals. So yet again, I would argue this view that, no minor party is actually taking lower house seats. Well, I think you're wrong on that. I think the Teals, if you look at them as a minor party, and they
are.
Yeah,
they basically are
taking lower house seats. Yeah. So, the Liberal Party's being attacked by all sides. We've been talking more about the right flank tonight, but they're getting eaten up on the left flank as well. And yet again, it's because they don't have charismatic, strong-willed leaders who are prepared to call a spade and fight for the values, which, really the Liberal Party has been the most successful federal party of the last century, but they've thrown those values under the bus over the last decade. And I'm not sure that the younger people aren't going to them at all. And a lot of older people are now abandoning them as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But guys, I've got to go. I'm literally down about 3%.
Could we do one last question?
Could
we do one really quick one? Because Max put in $8. He wants to quickly ask you about the National Development Bank, which is one of your key platforms.
Yeah. So that's one of our policies. Basically, it's as simple as this. Instead of using debt to fund assets, we're going to use our own equity. Australia is a sovereign country. What does that mean? It means we have title over all of our assets and our untapped assets. Our untapped wealth is basically the stuff that comes out of the sky every day for free. That's the sunlight, the rain, the soil that came out of, whenever 4 billion years ago. As the words of our national anthem says, wealth for toil. If we mix those 3 ingredients with toil, we get wealth. But what we want to do is, rather than secure that wealth against foreign debt, which is what Paul Keating started off in 1985, we want to actually secure it against our own title. And if you understand what a balance sheet looks like, on the left-hand side, you've got your asset. You can either, now when I look at a balance sheet, I'm a balance sheet analyst, I'll look to see who owns that asset. Is it the bankers through debt, or is it the actual shareholders through equity? By using an infrastructure bank, we are going to issue infrastructure bonds, which is similar to an ASX company issuing new shares against our own assets. And the beauty of that is that when we make money from those assets, it'll come back to the infrastructure bank as a dividend, or the interest will be paid from the state government back to the federal government, and then or to the infrastructure bank owned by the federal government, and that then comes back to us as a dividend instead of paying interest offshore on foreign debt. So that's a very quick rundown. But like I said, Drew, I've got to go. But
Yeah,
I'm
no,
happy
of
to come
course.
back
Thank
on
you,
next
Drew.
week. And do
Yeah,
another
would love to
Q&A,
do that.
if you like.
We'd love to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Rennick.
Yeah.
Thanks for the chat, Rennick.
Thank you, Rennick. Thanks,
Jared. Thank you.
Barclay, you should stay on for a bit because I'd like to to discuss a bit.
No, I thought we'd give Gerard the ability to finish a few questions there just because I know he had to head off. But
I actually wish we could have had him for longer. It was actually a really interesting question. it was actually a really interesting discussion. I actually think you're right, Barclay. I think the only path in Australian politics is through the major parties, but obviously it is a terrible situation right now. I mean, the Liberals right now are in a terrible state, and it's interesting. I wish I could have.
Can I say, Drew? Can I say, Drew? That there is absolutely no way, and you can speak to anyone, even people who are self-professed moderate liberals. There's absolutely no way that they go to the next, election with Susan Lee as leader. Yeah, and I would say that actually that underpins so much, right? I think we underestimate how many people look at politics as a US presidential style system, right? And what do I mean by US presidential style system? Whereby you're voting for the individual and not the party, as people should know. Of course, here in Australia, you vote for your federal MP in your local area. You don't actually get a say on Susan Lee or Anthony Albanese, but people vote as though they are, right? We saw that at the last federal election where so many people were voting in their local area. They didn't live in Dixon, which was Peter Dutton's seat, but they were voting to stop Peter Dutton, right? Yeah, I'd argue that the reason why the built-up reason why the Liberal Party are at such a low ebb right now isn't because just their brand is tarnished. Sure, that's part of it, of course, but I'd argue so much of it sits with the leader. That's why not all of the support is going to Labor, because Albo is not a popular leader either, right? I think a lot of people are just gravitating elsewhere because they just do not see a popular leader right now. And they didn't see one with Peter Dutton either, right? So I think it's an interesting time where I think you'll see. You heard?
There was new data today. I think it was from the Australian Election Survey, which always comes out after every election, and it basically said that Dutton was the most unpopular major party leader to ever enter an election of the past 35 years, which is actually incredible. That is just a stunning stat.
No, definitely. It's incredible stat. And I'll also just say on the record as well, I know we've got a bit of a poll going on for whether Gerard won or not. This was not this was not a challenge of who's got the better policies, right? And I think that Gerard did spend quite a bit of time talking about policies. This isn't a battle of who to vote for. If you wanted to hear who I vote for, I think it would be not who you might suspect who I vote for, right? But it's a question of which party to join. And party to join should be a question of not where your values best lie, but where your influence can best be had, right? Who you vote for does not need to be which party you join. And that is something at the moment we work that out as the conservative right wing, we could flourish a lot better. For instance, one thing maybe viewers won't know is that when Tucker Carlson lived in Washington, D.C., he was a member of the Democrat Party. Why? Yeah, not because he was. No, it's not because he went through a left-wing phase. It's because guess what? You live in Washington, D.C. Every single person that is going to be elected in Washington, D.C. is a Democrat. Have a say in the Democrat primaries then, right? And as a result, Tucker Carlson was a member of the Democrat Party. You adjust to the system in which you exist. And I personally like to think that I'm adjusted to the system that exists. I whined about it for a while, the fact that we don't have optional voting, the fact that there's a solid 20% rusted on Liberal Labor. Doesn't matter what they do, even if they run chimpanzee for Prime Minister, right? They'll still vote for them. Or you can adjust to it and say, hey, let's use these major parties as a vehicle, reform them, and hope to enact change. And a lot of people will say, oh, this has been tried for decades. Okay, what's your alternative? I'm genuinely all ears for an alternative. And people just say, they blurt out, people first. Okay, tell me which lower house seat. Tell me which lower house seat. You need to get to 76 lower house seats if you're going to be Prime Minister of this country, right? The people who say Pauline can be PM, find a lower house seat for her.
Literally cannot. Literally cannot.
The only time she's ever won a lower house seat, oh yeah, that's right, she was the Liberal candidate.
And she was literally a Liberal on the ballot. The funny thing is she was disendorsed up. She was disendorsed after the ballots had already been printed. So when people went to vote, it literally said Pauline Hanson, Liberal Party.
Yep, exactly.
Which is a funny fact. That's how
we've got a question here, though.
Yeah, so here's the question. Every LNP MP voted in effect to enshrine Labor's abortion laws. Why join when it would support these people? The centre-right is getting destroyed everywhere. The same thing will happen here. This is for you, Barclay.
Yep, great question, Ozbot Queensland. So one thing I'll add about that is there's 52 state LNP MPs in Queensland. What they did before that vote to guillotine debate on abortion was they all met in the LNP party room. They all agreed, hey, this abortion thing, that's going to be thrown at us by Labor first week of Parliament. We're going to come to a majority decision on abortion in this room here right now. And the moment we leave this room, we are going to be a unified force, right? So what they did was they had battles back and forth as to whether in this LNP term of government they should look to unwind the Termination of Pregnancy Act. I, of course, was on the side that, yes, we do need to unwind the Termination of Pregnancy Act. And I'm led to believe that 60% of the room were pro-choice and not for reforming the abortion laws. So not pro-choice, just not for changing the abortion laws. And 40% were for changing the abortion laws. But as they agreed to prior to the debate, they agreed to all leave the room and be unified, right? Because the moment you seem disjointed on an issue, that's the beginning of the end of your government, right? So they literally all left the room and said, we're going to take this view that in this first term of Parliament, we're not going to touch Labor's abortion laws. That's the wrong move, right? But to give you an idea, it's not a true statement to say that 52 LNP state MPs are pro-choice. That's an incorrect statement. I know at least 40% of them are pro-life, and if given the opportunity, would allow for pro-life policy, right? But what they are also keen to do is present a unified front of leader. If it had been the other case, that 60% of the room was pro-life and 40% of the room was pro-choice, well, guess what? They would all leave the room in a unified way being pro-life and taking that view to the Parliament and enacting laws to reflect, the views of someone who is pro-life. So that's the center of gravity that we need to change in the party. How do you do that? Well, you win pre-selections. There are a number of seats held by people who are Labor or Greens or held by Liberals who think that the way in which you beat Labor is by being Labor light. These are people who, in my opinion, will face pre-selection challenges before the 2028 state election. And I'd put it to people who are pro-life that you need to be in the room asking your representative whether they are pro-life or not. Let's say, for example, you live in the seat of a LNP MP who is pro-choice, right? You will be one of 30,000 voters in their area. You can email them and say, I'm very disappointed, Mr. State MP, that you did not vote to overturn abortion. You're one of 30,000, right? I guess they care. Or you could be one of 100 people that will be solely tasked with pre-selecting them for the 2028 election. Now you're one of 100 people. And guess what? If you bring along your wife and 3 kids, well, that's 5 people, right? That's a significant amount. If 5 out of 100 start saying, hey, buddy, I don't like what you're doing, change your act, they're going to have to start to listen. The LNP MPs do not listen to their voters. Any MPs do not listen to their voters. They listen to their pre-selectors. That is the only way in which they can guarantee their job for the next state election or federal election. And I put it to you that if you truly want to have a say in these decisions, be a pre-selector, be in the room.
It is actually true. People don't realize how obsessed the average politician is about their pre-selection. Like they will literally know every single member that joins their branch. Like they
exactly.
It's that I've been in the room where it works. Like it's Labor Party as well. Like literally every single person who joins up, they will know. So you go from being a random like the average MP will probably not even read their email. Will never read their emails really, like because they're representing 30,000 people. Well, if you're a federal MP, you're representing 150,000 people. Like, and how many spam email campaigns would you get? Like, they just wouldn't even care. But they know every single person who joins the branch, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah. There's just one question that I've seen come up here, Drew. There's a question by. You go.
I was going to quickly say, and on your point about the like the party discipline thing. I mean, Labor is incredible at party discipline. Someone had a comment here. Penny Wong, who's literally a lesbian woman in a same-sex marriage, she literally voted against gay marriage within the party. Like that's how hardcore the discipline in the Labor Party was.
Yes,
like when the Labor Party's official position was they, as a unified party, would be against same-sex marriage. Penny Wong, who is a lesbian woman who is now in a same-sex marriage, literally voted against gay marriage. That's how hardcore the discipline is inside the Labor Party.
I'm telling you that the battles are fought within the major parties. They're fought within the major parties, and then they come to their own decisions. But Drew, I just wanted to go to this question. By Mark
go to this question. Yeah. Which one's that?
Yeah.
I'll try.
There's one, Mark Aegis. Yeah, why would I join a party to fight against people when I can join PFP?
Okay, let's see that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so there's a question here. It's like, why would I join a party to fight against people when I can join PFP whose policies I already agree with? 100%, dude. If your ambition in politics is to join and go to your monthly branch meeting where everyone agrees with each other and you'll nod, oh, yeah, smooth brain. Yeah. Oh, cool. We'll agree. We'll agree.
It's literally not
100%
politics.
we'll agree. Right. No, if you literally just want to join a party where it's an echo chamber, I'll join people first. 100%. If echo chamber is your thing, dude, just people first. Like, if you just want to have your brain stroked, right? Just have, your worldviews. We all agree. Echo chamber. Yeah, join people first, 100%. If you actually want to fight and like actually be there where the battle is being fought against the wets who are trying to take over what was once a Conservative Party of government, I can tell you where the battlefield is, but you're not going to like the answer, right? And I know because I've been involved in it. I've not been a member, but I've certainly been involved in it. Yeah.
Politics at its core is literally about fighting over, like the outcomes of society. So yeah, I do agree with you on that. I mean, whether it's Labor or Liberal, like, there's no point being inside an echo chamber. You have to actually fight and convince people. That's literally just the goal of politics. There's a comment here by Sneedy. Sneedy says, Barclay, when the boomers die out, won't pre-selection rooms just be filled with young Liberal strivers outvoting branch stacking-based Twitter anons? That's what they say.
Great question. Well, that is genuinely what I'm trying to change, Sneedy. So like you can, I guess, comment on YouTube and all power to you. And it's good that you're supporting Drew financially. But guess what? Like the thing that's stopping that, well, yeah, it's me. It's me and my friends. And we are genuinely changing the future of the party. There is literally less than 800 members of the entire Queensland Young LNP. And I would say that I've recruited probably 200. And it's growing. And we're going to continue growing. And
how many was that again, Barclay? How many overall and how many have you recruited?
There's 800, and I would say I've probably recruited about 200. And now, of course, there's some attrition, like some people age out, some people lose interest, some people move into state. But I would say, yeah, on net, there's probably been an increase of 200 since I've been involved. And it will be the case that, yeah, you're not going to have this doomsday scenario where it'll just be young Liberal strivers. No, it'll actually be people who actually don't really want to get involved in politics. They're just members of their church. They're just pro-life. Or I just met them at a March for Australia and I've said to them, hey, like, if you actually want to see change on abortion policy, if you actually want to see change on immigration policy, do you actually think that the way in which you achieve that is by doing a few laps around Brisbane CBD? Like, okay, cool. You don't actually think that? Okay, let's be in the room the moment there is a pre-selection between a pro-immigration person and an anti-immigration person from within the LNP. And then once the anti-immigration person wins and we keep on ticking up those wins, well, then I think you'll see it become a firmly anti-immigration party in the not too distant future. And that's an internal way of achieving this kind of success. So yeah, Sneedy, challenge accepted. I mean, I don't know if you want to help, but yeah, I'm doing it. And I don't think there's anything that can change my mind because even with someone as formidable as Gerard Rennick, someone who I respect, there is no alternative that he's proposing. The alternative that he's proposing is to say that one nation isn't a vehicle and that the Liberals are dying. That's a diagnosis. That's not a proposal. That's not a promise. That's not a vision. Rennick can afford to be black-pilled because he's past 50 years old. I'm 25. I cannot be black-pilled and just spend the last 30 years of my life bemoaning the shortcomings of the Liberal Party. That's not what my future entails. I haven't had kids yet, haven't got married yet, working on it. But that's something that I want to aspire to.
This is a really good point on this, Barclay. And this is not even against Rennick. This was actually more against like the NSN people I see on Twitter where they're like, oh, Hasty's a communist because he's not going to advocate immediately for cutting immigration by 99%. Like it's like, okay, guys, like good, like they're like the right wing equivalent of like the left wing purity communist types, right? It's like it's gonna be 2070, and like European Australians will represent like 20% of the population, and they'll be like telling like their like one grandkid, oh bro, like we lost the country, but at least for a summer of 2025, we got to attack Hasty on Twitter and say, oh, you're not based, Hasty, you're fake. Like in the meantime, while you get to sit there thinking you're so based and you're pure, like you've lost your country. It's just that's literally that's politics, right? Like anyway, it's the same. When I was a leftist, I hated the left wing purity types because they killed everything. And now that I feel I'm conservative, I hate the right-wing purity, far-right insane guys, because it's like they're just doing nothing while the country explodes.
Yeah, no, and that's my big issue is sometimes our issue is not with the left. It's actually the black pill people on the right. It's kind of a form of nihilism where they basically think that everything's controlled by a country in the Middle East. Everything is all worth giving up on. There's no point having kids.
Bro, don't have kids. Don't join your local branch and don't have kids because of Israel. Like, are you actually fucking kidding?
Yeah.
Like, that's insane. It's mentally ill.
There's a number of people. Yeah, there's a number of people who just go down, in my opinion, a rabbit hole, and they actually just lose any kind of semblance. Now, it's in my opinion, and I might not even agree with you on the Israel topic, Drew. But in my opinion, it's important to look at those kind of issues and realize, hey, I'm young. I've got to be involved. I've got to try and change this kind of thing. I can't give up at age 25. I can't just stay at home all day and like Nick Fuentes reels, right? You actually got to get out there in the real world. And make a bit of a change. And the way you do that is by getting involved in the pre-selection process. So,
look, this is all really interesting. The other thing I was going to say is I really wish that we got the chance to talk to Rennick about March for Australia and that big clash that he had. I'm interested, Barclay, what are your thoughts on that whole thing where Rennick was fighting with people and there was a big debate? I didn't really follow it that closely, but maybe explain to people what happened and.
Yeah. So in my opinion, there is a certain group on the right that I think have this no true Scotsman fallacy. And now that saying comes from essentially, you've got a whole group of 5 people and they're all comparing their DNA kind of thing. And then one person sees that they've got 5% Irish ancestry and they says, you're not a true Scotsman.
Oh,
right?
the Greeks have to go because these people literally tell me that Greeks have to be deported. It's bro, literally on the current demographic pathway of Australia, within 15 years, European Australians are going to be a minority, and they're busy saying Greeks have to go. Are they fucking mental? It's just these people are just they're just not living in reality.
Yep. No, exactly. And they basically got a Puritan kind of view, and they kind of looked at Gerard Rennick and they said, "Oh, you don't want full white Australia tomorrow, therefore you're not good enough for our beliefs." Gerard Rennick, in my opinion, has moved the Overton window on a number of topics, right? And he did that because guess what? He was pre-selected to be the LNP Senate candidate in 2019 and served in the parliament for 6 years. I don't care once he gets elected whether he goes to be a minor party or whatever. The fact is he used the major party to be a vehicle to get elected. I put a challenge out in the chat. Pauline Hanson, Bob Catter, Craig Kelly, any party you want, Gerard Rennick, George Christensen, all these people. Tell me if you would have ever heard of them if they didn't win a major party pre-selection ballot. And it's the question they'll never be able to answer because the fact is they wouldn't have known them. Pauline Hanson is the figurehead for any kind of minor party movement in Australia, whether you like it or not. And you would not know who she was if it wasn't the fact that 10 grannies with wheelchair walker frames rocked up to the Redbank Plains RSL to vote for her in the pre-selection to be the Liberal Party candidate for Oxley in 1996, right? That's a truth that you need to understand. And if you want to create the next kind of right-wing leaders, or maybe improve the crop of right-wing leaders, I can tell you it will come from a major party. So, I would say get involved. It's not about who you vote for. It's about which party you join. I'm telling you that the best way to be involved is to join the LNP. And if the people in the comments are trying to change my mind, it's only reaffirmed it. So I really appreciate you guys too.
Interesting. Barclay, is there anything else you want to talk about or mention before we might wrap things up? I'm interested.
No, I want to say thank you so much, Drew. I know you've been on a bit of a journey yourself, politically changing as well. And I think it's very good that you're very outspoken on these topics. There is a lot of change happening on the right now. I mean, you're seeing in the United States, you're seeing in the UK, you're seeing in Australia. And each of the outcomes and the remedies for all of these situations involve different prescriptions. In the UK, I think it's fair to say that you should 100% be involved with reform because they are becoming a party of government. In Australia, it is very much the case that optional voting is not a thing, and compulsory voting means that we are essentially locked into a two-party system. And you can complain about that. You can leave super chats. You can do 5,000 comments in the comment section bemoaning that, or you can start a whole political party on frustrations of that and make the 16th minor right-wing party work.
Actually, you know what we should really quickly discuss before we wrap things up? I literally had the minor party experience. I formed the Democratic Alliance, right? And it's impossible.
Exactly.
It's literally impossible. I learned that the hard way. It's like it was fun, but it's basically impossible.
Yep.
I literally ran
exactly.
I literally ran my own party in 2022, and we raised like $200,000. And that, even with $200,000, like, I mean, to 25-year-olds, that's a lot of money. To the major party, that's nothing. Like Palmer, that's 50 cents. And you can't do anything. You literally can't do anything with no money, no resources.
Yep.
It's impossible. It literally is impossible. That's my experience.
Well,
it was literally impossible.
Clive Palmer proves that even with money, you can't break this thing, right? You'd like to think, we just need to convince Gina Reinhart to be on our side, bro, and we can crack this whole thing. No,
no.
I think as Gerard Rennick pointed out, I think Mrs. Reinhart, is very fond of Pauline Hanson. I think we'll back her to the hilt. So yeah, I don't think it's the case that you're going to have a new party formed, even if there's a lot of money involved. But, one thing I'll say just to sign off, I won't do a plug. I'm really only on Facebook and Twitter mostly. You can follow me at Barclay McGain, and on Facebook too. I post a few opinions. Other than that, this isn't my job.
You've got to do more on Twitter, Barclay. You're on 100%. Facebook, but you've got to be on Twitter. That's the future.
I definitely do need to be. And
you should also make short reels on Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that, because, like, unfortunately, no one reads anymore, Barclay. So unfortunately, like, that's the way to communicate.
No, you're exactly right. We need to be better at communicators. But if any of the people in this chat would like to continue the discussion with me, there's just a bombard of people messaging, some good, some bad, of course. But make sure you send me a message.
There's a lot of like lefty trolls in the comments. Who cares?
That's good. No.
They're boosting the channel. They're literally boosting the channel.
I couldn't pay these people enough, honestly, Drew. They are just incredible.
Mate, that's my experience too.
Awesome.
Like the haters always, like, without the haters, I literally would be no one. So they're good. We want them. We actually love them in a way.
Yeah. Fantastic. All right. Anyone, if you'd like to send me a message on Messenger, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter. If you don't want to message me, that's fine too. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Barclay. That was really good. And let's do another one soon. Rennick said
let's do it.
Potentially, yeah. So let's do it. All right. Thank you, King.
Legends. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Bye. See you, mate. Thank you, everyone. It's actually been a really interesting conversation. I thought that was actually really fascinating. I do lean more towards the Barclay angle, where it's like, you've got to be interested in forming a government, and the only way you do that is through major parties. That said, I mean, I would never in a billion years be anywhere near the LNP party. Like, they hate me. They like, I can't be involved in politics because I've been too controversial as an individual. But I like Andrew Hastie. I'm not personally involved, but I really like Andrew Hastie. And I think people should try do their best to support Andrew Hastie. The best way to do that, if you're a conservative person, if you're conservative and you want to help Andrew Hastie, the way you would do that is you wouldn't go to one of these minor parties. You would go to a major party. I think Rennick is a really smart guy in lots of ways. I've got a lot of criticisms of Rennick. I really strongly disagree with him on foreign policy. Like, for example, I've got a Ukraine shirt on. He is very anti-Ukraine. That's another thing. I mean, I strongly disagree with Rennick on foreign policy, on a lot of domestic policy stuff, like, national development banks and building up public infrastructure and having a role for government in the economy, building up public infrastructure. I actually agree with him on that sort of stuff. I align with him on that sort of thing, much more so than I would with more traditionally sort of like laissez-faire conservatives, like people like George Brandis, who sort of have an attitude which is kind of like the market should just let rip, and that's the only thing that should govern society. My view is that I do support free markets. I do support capitalism. I think it's far superior to socialism. That said, I think capitalism needs to serve the nation. Capitalism needs to serve the people of the nation. Of course, like, we don't serve markets. Markets have to serve human beings first and foremost. That's my view. And so that's why I definitely align more with, for example, the Hastie people, where Hastie sees a role for government in building up manufacturing, sees a role for government in supporting working class people. He doesn't just worship the market as this blind force. But look, it's been really interesting. I really want to thank everybody who's tuned in today. If you've been watching all this time, please subscribe to the channel. It helps me reach more people. Leave a like on the video. It helps us reach more people. And yeah, please subscribe, because I've been building up the channel. I've done 105 live streams so far this year. The Drew Pavlis Show is growing. I would like to get it to the point where I can build this into a full-time professional gig for myself. I love political communication. I love political media. And that's my goal long-term, to be a political media commentator and be able to do this full-time. And so if you can subscribe and like the video and stuff like that, every small bit helps. And I appreciate it a lot, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And make sure to subscribe. And God bless you all. Have a great day. Thank you, everyone. And, Australia first. We love Australia. I hope all Patriots will get involved and fight for a better country. Love you all. Thank you so much. Signing off.